Welcome. I am your host, Manpreet, aka MMA Lock of the Night, and your boy on Twitter at MMALOTN. Joining me as always is the beardless Cody Saftik. You guys can find him at MMALOTN. You can find him at CJ Saftik on Twitter. The beard is just completely throwing me off. We're here propping you up for UFC Vegas 22, but I just can't get over the fact that we got babyface Cody Saftik joining me tonight. Cody, what's going on? Tell the people what happened with your face, because this is too weird for me.
Yeah, well, the joke would have been I wanted to have donated the beard to Jonathan Martinez because, man, that got me good. We'll talk about it in a second. But, yeah, basically, the serious issue of it was I was just trying to trim it. It's kind of getting long, especially, like, in spots. It grows out full, but, some spots are a little longer than the other. I'm sure you are on top of grooming maintenance, and it is required. So I tried to, shave it down. And it's not like I just clunked out a big piece. Just, like, during the process, I just screw this, man. It'd be way easier to just shave the entire thing off. So that's what I went with. Plus, Canadian summer just around the corner. It's springtime now. Weather finally starting to break. Finally starting to get a little bit better. So I'll take it. And then, happy to be joined as always and talking some props. Last week, I felt like the result was better. The picks were a little bit better. And then on a prop standpoint, man, I'm thinking I'm looking good. Jonathan Martinez. We got by TKO. He drops Davey Grant in the first round. And then MMA happens, right? Knocked out the second. Ryan Spann plus 245 by TKO. That one obviously, hit. That was nice. And then in the main event, 20 minutes was a long more way to go, but I felt like we were doing good with the Leon Edwards by decision. Unfortunately, got a push out of that. So not a losing week. We got a plus 245 hit. The other one didn't. And then you got a push on the main prop, obviously. So, not the end of the world. And this is a nice card. It's a fun card, 13 fights, a couple of decent little spots. And on a prop standpoint, a couple nice little plus money plays.
Yeah, for sure. I think I only hit one out of the three, the best props that I gave, which was Haniyaya by sub plus 120. So I should have made that like a lock of the night play, because I was dead set on that one. I was like, this is happening. I don't care how much shit people want to talk about Haniyaya's gas tank. He's not going to need to worry about that gas tank, because this fight ain't going into that third round. And luckily for us, he did end up sinking in that rear naked choke in the second round. But regardless, happy to be talking UFC Vegas 22. This one's headlined by Derek Brunson and Kevin Holland, pivotal middleweight scrap that we got coming up. Another instance where we got Derek Brunson playing gatekeeper almost to these up-and-coming guys, just like he did last time around against Edmen Shahbazyan. It came through for him last time, where he was able to turn away Edmen Shahbazyan, finishing him in the third round. But he has a pretty young, spry up-and-coming Kevin Holland here, who's running a 5-fight winning streak. Really excited to break this fight down with you and obviously with the fans that we got sitting in the chat. All right. Before we get into the breakdowns, always a reminder, make sure you guys hit that like and subscribe below. That's the best way to show you guys some support, show odds some support, and have us keep on coming back on a week-to-week basis. So, yeah, very happy to do that. All right. Let's get right into the card. Let's not dilly-dally too much longer. First up, we got JP Buys going up against Bruno Silva. Obviously, this line has closed a lot since the opening. We had JP Buys opening up at minus 280. He's all the way down to minus 145 now. People are liking what they see from Bruno Silva, and as do I. Even though he's winless inside the UFC, I was shit my pants when that Tagir Ulanbekov fight went to a decision, because I was like, ooh, I probably shouldn't have parlayed Tagir here. Luckily, the judges come through for us and they give the fight to Tagir. But man, those calf kicks for Silva were really paying dividends for him and really slowing down the forward movement of Tagir. Now here with Buys, we got a guy that seems to have sketchy cardio, doesn't seem to do the greatest once fights go outside of that first round. But in that first round, he's great wrestling, great submission ability. He has a ton of potential. The kid's still young, right? Obviously married to a fighter that's fighting later on in this card in Cheyanne Buys. So these girls or these two fighters are like full hog in it. They don't really care or look too much at anything else. So they're full hog at Fortis MMA, getting trying to round out the game as best as possible. For me, I do lean the Bruno Silva side though. I think he'll be able to survive that first round and then start to take over. My question is, how does that second round look? And does Buys have enough in the tank to go out there and actually take that round from him? Because that third round will be very critical for Bruno Silva come that time. So I do lean Silva here, not with the utmost confidence. And the props that I'm looking at, over 2.5 minus 160, not a bad line. But Silva via decision plus 290. I really like that spot as well. How are you seeing this one?
Yeah, I think that Silva's the popular dog pick because it was priced just very poorly. But the guy's always in these close fights. It doesn't matter what fight he's having. I mean, he gives a good account of himself. He's just not quite getting the win. Man, I wish I would have pulled the trigger on this one, to be honest with you. But last week we spoke about Jinyu Frey's just too talented to just flop out 0-3 in the UFC, and maybe they're not the greatest matchups, but here's a girl that's in close fights largely, but she's just getting a little bit out-muscled or a little bit that's the exact problem with Bruno Silva. Like, maybe he's just losing a few of these exchanges. He's giving up one more takedown than he's completing. He's just not throwing enough strikes, but they're always really close fights. And I go back to the Khalid Taha fight where he manages to take Taha down twice. It's a tough fight against Taha, who pops from USADA. He's on the juice, and Taha is like a little stump of a man. If he was on the gear, just a strong, muscular guy, loses his debut, no problem. Prior to that, he already had a draw with Casey Kinney. He was fighting good regional show competition. He's billed as a training partner of the Patricio brothers from Bellator, both Patricio and Patricki, Henry Cejudo. You saw how good Eric Anders looked until he got himself a no contest. His last fight, just one training camp at Fight Ready MMA. So, yeah, I really think that Bruno Silva is a guy that has potential. He has skill, but then they go ahead for his second fight and they give him David Dvorak. Well, here's a Czech prospect who the kid's like 24 years old and has like 30 pro fights already. Has been there and done that, and is really developing and turning into a decent prospect. So close fight against David Dvorak. He manages to take down Dvorak 3 times, and I got the fight 1-1 going into the third round. Unfortunately, the leg kicks and just the more output, and it goes Dvorak's. But again, gives a good account of himself. Scores 3 takedowns, just doesn't get the win. Now Tagir is tougher than Khalid Taha. Tagir is tougher than David Dvorak. He is well-rounded. He's got the wrestling. He's been training with Khabib in the mountains of Dagestan since he's 14 years old. He's referred to as a cousin as Khabib Nurmagomedov. He has a style. He's got that length of Zabit. He's got all these accolades that he brings to the table. This should be the easiest fight yet. And yet he gives the best account of himself yet, scoring 4 takedowns over this guy, who, by the way, doesn't go down very easy. And, generally having success with the leg kick, having success breaking him down. There were spots in that fight where I'm massively sweating, and I got Tagir. And I'm thinking, man, I hope the judges are going to side with the grappling, the takedowns, even though he's not doing a ton with them. But Bruno just keeps coming. So now you got he's effectively 0-2-1 in the UFC, right? 2 losses, got the no contest out of it. It doesn't look good, but here's a guy that's got all the skills. So JP Buys is young, man. He's 24. He's making his UFC debut. He was fought on Contender Series 3 years ago against Joby Sanchez, and you saw how much it was just like too big of a gap, right? Too much of a skill gap. The experience, savvy Joby Sanchez is able to pull one out. And one thing about Joby Sanchez, guy that wrestled out of Arizona, he had good wrestling, right? He's an ASU guy. He had good wrestling. JP Buys his build as this great South African wrestler, could have been an Olympian, this and that. He's got all the accolades. But, against an experienced MMA fighter who also knows how to wrestle, he comes up shy. All of his wins since then, been lower level, right? The regional scene level guys, and he generally goes out there and gets the quick win. Back in the UFC now, 24 years old, still young. Could a guy that can wrestle not give him problems again? Yes, and Bruno Silva can wrestle. I mean, he's known as a Brazilian. He's got striking. He's got jiu-jitsu. Guy can't wrestle? No, guy can wrestle. He's out of a wrestle-heavy camp, and he's shown in his 3 fights in the UFC so far that he knows how to wrestle. That'll give Buys problems. Now, here's the thing with Bruno Silva springing the upset. Bruno Silva, for as much as we could talk about, he does have, for a guy that's winless in 3 starts in the UFC, he's not a finisher. He doesn't have that big finishing. He's not big with the submissions. He's not big with the power. He's more of a grinder, He will take you down. He will establish control. He'll win rounds. His submission game, he just keeps you honest. The striking, big on the calf kick. He's got a good right hand, but nothing that really does more than just keep you honest and get your attention. So if Bruno Silva goes out there and springs the upset, which if you're a underdog backer, that'd be a good spot for you. Bruno Silva goes out there and springs the upset. I think he's going to do it by decision. Flip side to that with JP Buys, if he is the real deal and he's a great wrestler and he's made all these adjustments to his games, yeah, taking up Bruno Silva, no easy task. And you've seen that in the Ulanbekov fight last time around, that like these young wrestling, grappling type guys, they go in there and they're taking a guy that's sparring rounds with Henry Cejudo, who's BJJ black belt, who's in camp with the Patricio and Patricki Pitbull brothers. Like he's been in bad spots before. He's durable. He's able to survive. So the best spot that I like in this fight, instead of going one side or the other, is fight goes the distance. Fight goes the distance minus 140. I think either guy, if they pull out the victory, it'll be by decision. So that's the prop I like most.
The one thing I do want to bring up, and you started the breakdown off this, you brought up Jinyu Fry, and I find similarities with the Jinyu Fry and Gloria DePaula matchup and this one in terms of the circumstances surrounding it, right? Both hot prospects coming off the Contender Series who have losses and showed issues in past fights, and then you have a winless UFC fighter who has a ton of skills, and that's exactly what we're getting here with Bruno Silva. So maybe we get 2 weeks in a row where we see the UFC vet per se, even though they've only had 3 fights in the UFC. Hopefully they come through and they catch as a dog. All right. Let's move on to the next fight. We got Julia Avila going up against Yulia Stoliarenko. And we got it. Yeah, we'll try to go with the last names here with Avila and Stoli. I'm not sure if you want to start rolling the Renko, but I'm very excited for this fight. This fight has chaos written all over it, in my opinion. I think that we'll get either a finish from either side, which is why I like the under 2.5. I personally have a bet on it at plus 150. I think that's some solid amount of exposure there. It reminds me of, or Stoliarenko almost reminds me of a Brandon Royval, that she goes out there and just creates absolute chaos, right? She has a crazy jiu-jitsu game, 8 out of 9 victories via armbar. A lot of people dubbing her the Lithuanian Ronda Rousey, but she seems to have at least a little bit more durability than our girl Ronda over there. So she can go out there, she can take some damage, but I think that going up against a girl like Avila, she might start to crumble a bit under that power and some of that the strength of Avila. Stoliarenko, we have seen her go 5 rounds in her last fight again in Invicta before coming to the UFC, and that was probably the bloodiest fight we've ever seen outside of Ross Houston against Nicholas Dalby. Probably one of the craziest fights we've ever seen as well. But in this fight, I think that Stoliarenko is going to go out there, try to create some chaos, maybe try to pull off a submission victory, get one of her patented arm bars, but in doing so will either overexpose herself and leaving herself open to be finished, or actually get the submission herself. I was thinking about taking a small poke on Stoliarenko at that plus 315 line, but my thinking was that if she wins, she's probably winning inside the distance. And if Avila wins, there's a chance that she wins by decision. But I think she has all the upside to go out there and finish this girl as well. So I do like Avila here. I don't like the price tag on her. Minus 350 is a little bit too much. But for her to win inside the distance, you're still looking at Avila inside the distance is plus 185. I'd rather just cover both opportunities here or both outcomes here by taking the under 2.5 at plus 155. On the flip side with Stoliarenko, you got to think if she wins this fight, it's via submission, and that's plus 600 all the way up to plus 800 on a couple of spots. So if that's kind of your style and you're fading or feeling the Stoliarenko side, that's the way you go. But either way, I think under 2.5 is the way to go in this fight. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, it was a crazy amount of blood in that Stoliarenko fight. And that is the massive difference between canvas and vinyl, right? Cage Warriors uses vinyl, so they just start slipping. It's like someone dumped water on it, whereas like canvas soaks it a little bit. But yeah, it's a crazy bloodbath. And the thing about Stoliarenko is that not only is she just the armbar queen, the Lithuanian Ronda Rousey wins 5 straight fights by like first round armbar. A lot of the times in like under 30 seconds or a minute, just grabs it and jumps guard on it. She's also like a current Lethwei world champion. Like this girl's gone over to Myanmar and fought in the art of 9 limbs. It's basically Muay Thai with headbutts. It's a crazy sport. It's vicious, and only the strong survive it. Honestly, when you watch it, it's not the most technical striking, but it's just brute force aggression, and that's what she has, and that's what she brings into MMA. So she's got the striking. She don't mind getting hit to deliver a punch, and she has big power. As far as her submission game goes, she's willing to. I don't like people who pull guard. I generally don't bet on them, nor do I have much interest in it. But she's got that confidence that she's going to throw up the armbar. And even in the Kunitskaya fight, where she's getting owned pillar to post, man, one of those arm bars is actually really tight.
I know.
That's her move, right? So you got a girl that can strike. You got a girl that's willing to throw up some submissions. Like, she's dangerous. But what you do take away from the Kunitskaya fight is, like, physically in the clinch, you just put her right up against the cage, and she just like has an inability to move. The clock just ticked away. She was not able to do anything. And with Julia Avila coming off that loss to Eubanks her last time out, she wants to get back in the win column. The path of least resistance would just be cage control. Press this girl backwards. One thing about Avila, she is a natural 135er. I mean, she fills up the weight class very well. She is strong. She is powerful. When she's on top of you, you have massive problems. Her top game is great. When she matched against Eubanks, had egg all over my face there. I love Julia Avila in that spot. She's got better striking. She's got much better cardio. Here's a girl that ran track and field D1 at the University of Notre Dame. I believe she was a BJJ brown belt. Striking's come a long way. She's fought like the likes of Nico Montano and Marion Reneau just on her regional scene resume. Comes to the UFC, has been looking nearly flawless. How would she lose this fight to Eubanks? Only it turns out that's her one kryptonite is exposed in that fight. Like, off her back, she's got nothing. She doesn't move. She doesn't scramble to get up. Now, it's unfair to say that because Eubanks is a black belt. Eubanks is a high-level Lloyd Irvin BJJ black belt, and her top game is smothering. So maybe give the Julia Avila the benefit of the doubt that it's much more difficult to get up against an opponent like Eubanks, but she didn't look great. She's also, mid-30s at this point. I don't know that sky's the limit for her. I think she's a good fighter. I don't know where the improvements are coming from, right? So in this spot, I have her winning, My concern is that, yeah, we know she doesn't deal great against that physicality. If for whatever reason Stoliarenko goes out there, presses her backwards with her striking, doesn't allow Avila to get off, and ends up on top, she's going to have a lot of problems, right? Because Stoliarenko is a good grappler, has good ground and pound, could tire her out a little bit. We've seen her fight 5 rounds. I don't think cardio is a problem for Julija Avila, but again, she's normally the one coming forward and being aggressive. Like, if that's off the table, then Stoliarenko is now a live underdog. But I liked her a lot. I really did. And the Eubanks fight was a bad spot, but I'm going to chalk it up to everybody has a bad night. In this sport, you can't always be optimal 100%. She fought a bad game plan, did physically look like she was all there. Weight cut wasn't great. I do want to wait until I see weigh-ins. I want to see where she's at. And I am going to chase her one more time. Now, the money line, as most Julija Avila fights are, is just way blown out of proportion. You want no side of that. I did go with Avila by decision. I know you were gunning with that under 2.5. I think if she just fights a smart game plan, which is a lot of cage control, try to get on top, hopefully she just grinds out some rounds. And the Avila by decision was plus 110. But women's MMA's got a way to cost us here and there. So I don't know that I'm going to have a ton of investment on this one. But the pick is going to be Julija Avila by decision plus 110.
Yeah, this isn't the only fight where I feel like the women's MMA favorite is too big of a favorite, but we'll obviously get into the next fight a little bit later on in the podcast. Just a reminder to the 120 people that we currently have, if you haven't hit that like, please do hit that like. That definitely helps your boys out. All right, let's move on to the next one. We got Montel Jackson taking on the UFC newcomer Jesse Strader. Most people will remember Jesse Strader for getting knocked out by Marcelo Rojo on the combate scene, and Rojo obviously made his UFC debut last week against Charles Jourdain in a crazy fight. How they didn't get fight of the night, absolutely beyond me, but that's besides the point. We're talking about Jesse Strader here. He seems like a guy that goes out there and is just a headhunter, wants to take your head off, throws a ton of power in his shots. That's pretty much how he made his name on the combate scene. And then Montel Jackson on the other side is still in that prospect phase of his career, right? I think a lot of people are going out there and kind of just writing him off now since he has two losses inside the UFC. But losing to Ricky Simon and Brett Johns is not the worst thing in the world. I think that Jackson still has a ton to offer to the game. I still think he has a ton of potential, and I think his ceiling is very, very high. Very interesting frame for this division. Solid wrestling game, good hands, good kicks, very good submission game as well. And I think that's what's going to come into play here is his ability to get this fight to the ground and seek some sort of submission. So I do favor Montel Jackson here. This is another spot where I do like the under 2.5. I know it's minus 185, but Jesse Strader is one of those guys that, out of his 6 fights, only one of them have gone to decision. And that fight was a crazy fight to begin with. And then Montel Jackson, on the other hand, his last couple fights have gone to a decision, but I think the main ingredient in this fight for it to not go to a decision is Mr. Jesse Strader. And I think he's going to find himself on his back a little bit too much, overextending, and then find himself in a submission. So I was kind of surprised to see Montel Jackson via submission at plus 685. I think that's a little bit crazy. We've seen him lock up the dart stroke in the past. It's definitely something that he's chasing. And I feel like if he wants to go up against the least amount of resistance in this fight, he's going to look to drag it to the ground nice and early and hopefully sink in a submission of some sort. But plus 685, call me crazy, but that is absolutely outrageous of a line, considering I feel like the skill gap when it comes to the wrestling and the grappling is going to be miles apart. So I lean Jackson here. Minus 700 is absolutely crazy, but I'd rather go with the chalk on the under 2.5 at minus 185, just in case Jesse Strader finds the chin of Jackson and puts him out too. How are you seeing this one?
Okay, so I saw the same thing, plus 685 by submission. I was like, no way. I mean, here's a guy that submitted Brian Keller. You're telling me he can't go out there and submit Jesse Strader at this price? Love it. But you know what? If you want, he could this is what it's going to come down to. If he's got the back, do you just keep punching or do you seek for the rear naked choke? But either way, I think he's going to have a spot to finish this. So inside the distance as well as minus 170, which doesn't sound great considering it's an inside the distance prop. But Montel Jackson being a 7-1 favorite, I mean, it's kind of warranted. And I actually do like Montel Jackson. I mean, he's young. He's come to the UFC, and he didn't really have a whole lot of experience. I mean, you look back, he's only been fighting professional for less than 4 years, right? Made his debut in June of 2017. He's fighting in the UFC 2 years later. And by all opponents, they give him Ricky Simon, who's already a Titan FC champion, who's already got a lot of experience, who's being touted by Chiasson as being the next big thing. And I remember that fight because a lot of people were telling me in like the pre-fight stuff, your tape studying Montel Jackson, a lot of his like training partners, guys that have worked with him, they all said the same thing. They're like, he's got the biggest hand you've ever seen, and he's got the strongest grip strength you've ever seen. And I remember watching the Ricky Simon fight. I mean, we all got Ricky Simon best. Just a tough spot for a young Montel Jackson. And remember, he kept grabbing wrist control, and Ricky was like fighting for his dear life to just separate this guy off of his wrist.
Even John's, even in the John's fight, you see him struggling so much just to get rid of that grip. You're so on right. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, it's almost as if he's grabbing the glove, but he's not. He's just this like he's a very strong guy. And so what I like about him is that he's 2 years into his pro career fighting in the UFC against a guy like Ricky Simon and comes up short, but it's no problem. Then, no favors, he drives Brian Kelleher, a 30-fight veteran of the game, a guy that's very crafty, a guy that's a seasoned veteran, a guy that's already got couple wins over Julio Arce. He's fought Renan Barao. He's a savvy veteran of the sport. You get this guy in your second fight, and he goes out and he submits him. He's 0-1 in the UFC at the time. Just launches with Ricky Simon, and he goes out and he submits him. Then you see the growth. The Sugman Tath fight, he's young, he's green, he's getting better. The Felipe Cruz fight, he's young, he's green, he's getting better. And then they match him against Brett Johns. Brett Johns is a top 15 guy in the world, and he's going to make a decent little splash over there in Bellator. The fact that he's no longer with the UFC means nothing. It's just 135 is the most talent-rich division. Brett Johns didn't really factor in. No problem. Guy's extremely talented. But Montel Jackson's actually gone ahead and taken off like 2 years since then. It's been almost 2 years since we've seen him last. So he comes back now as a 28-year-old, and I am extremely excited to see those improvements. The time that he's taken off almost is like it was like 1/3 of his entire pro career. You know, dude's been fighting for like 4 years, and he's taken a year and plus a year and a half off. Like, you know, it's almost half of his pro career. So I think he's really going to make those improvements. I think he's probably worked a lot on his BJJ at Pura Vida, which is his gym in Milwaukee. You know, his striking is getting better. He's a long, rangy guy, very physically strong. But against Jesse Strader, all you have to do is watch a couple fights, namely the Rojo one, if you can. But as far as the coaching staff looking at this guy breaking down his style, why would you stand with him? Yeah. He is going to throw a 500 punch combination, mostly at the head. He's going to just keep throwing. And he's not one of those guys that just topples over and gets tired. He just keeps coming at you until you put him away. In the Rojo fight, you know, people keep saying how crazy Rojo versus Jourdain was. Man, go check this. This is a one-round banger. But Rojo versus Jesse Strader is a crazy fight. They are both laying it down. Rojo eventually breaks him and puts him away. But, I mean, Jesse Strader is a dangerous guy. I'm pretty sure he's Aaron Carter's boxing coach, which I thought was absolutely – right away I was like, fade. But then I looked at the line. It was like everybody's on the same page. Yeah. So what we're chasing here is we're chasing Montel Jackson inside the distance, minus 170. Go out there, take Strader down. If he submits him and we hit a plus 685, sweet. If he TKOs him, that's still okay, minus 170. Montel Jackson's not exactly great parlay material just because, again, such a big price tag. And – Jesse Strader's not a walkover, you know. He's 5-1. He's fought virtually nobody. The only guy that's notable in his record is his loss, which is Rojo. But that doesn't mean he's not dangerous. You know, this is a fight he's taking on short notice. He's got nothing to lose. He's a huge underdog. He's got a very fan-friendly style. Why not go and chuck some bombs and maybe land 50 Gs? Or why not go chuck some bombs and then get a better matchup your next time out because they feel like they can build a young, good-looking guy like this who has a fan-friendly style. Like, there's a lot of benefits that you would get out of this. But still, it would be go out there. So, you know, you're probably chasing those unders on the fight as well. But my official play is going to be Montel Jackson inside the distance, minus 170. And I really do like what you're saying, plus 685 on the by submission. So small sprinkle on that, but main play inside the distance.
For sure. I'm very much looking forward to it, at least for the possible improvements that we're going to see out of Montel Jackson, because I truly believe he's still a very bright prospect that should flesh out pretty well in that 135-pound division. All right. Let's move on to the next fight here. We got a 185-pound fight between Trevin Giles and Roman Dolidze. Dolidze coming down to 185 pounds from 205 on short notice, but apparently it was something that was already in the works. So apparently he was already walking around at 205 pounds. He wanted to go out there and, you know, just make the 185-pound division regardless, and this opportunity falls into his lap. And he's already in Vegas. He's a guy that it seems like he's moved his camp officially to Vegas now, even though he owns a gym out there in Ukraine, training closely with Eric Nixick, obviously managed by Ali Abdelaziz. This is a guy that people see some potential in, and he fights that way, right? Like he fights like a guy that just doesn't give a fuck about what you're going to be bringing towards him. Especially if you watch his last couple of regional fights, he's going out there and his output is very low, but he's looking for the proper opportunity to go out there and take your head off. And more often than not, he's taking your head off. If you just watch those fights alone, you don't understand the fact or realize the fact that he's actually a higher level BJJ. I believe he's a black belt at this point in time, but he does have a solid submission game. More often than not, he was leaning on that earlier in his career, but the later he got into his career, he really started to fall in love with his hands, and for good reason, right? He's knocking these guys out. He's 8-0 at this point in time. Seems like he has a decent amount of potential still. Trevin Giles, on the other hand, he's a guy that I just don't really think is the greatest fighter. Like, I think he's good. Obviously, he has a great record on him, too. I believe he's 16-2 at this point in time. 13-2. And he's fought some good competition. I believe he was the LFA champ as well before coming over to the UFC. but I feel like he's going to have some trouble here with Dolidze. Dolidze has some decent volume that he showed in his last fight against John Allen, where he accrued over 110 total strikes, not significant strikes, but so total strikes. Whereas Trevin Giles in his last fight against Bevan Lewis, a fight that was mainly contested on the feet, only went out there and struck or threw 51 total strikes. Like his output really isn't the greatest, and his cardio doesn't look the greatest either. Luckily for him, he goes out there and knocks out Bevan Lewis in the third round. And then on the flip side for Dolidze, he goes out there and wins a split decision against John Allen, which was weird as hell because I'm not sure how you could see, more than one round for John Allen in that fight. Obviously, there are some fight IQ issues with Roman Dolidze, especially with him always dropping back for that heel hook and even getting cocky enough to the point of just like talking to his corner and saying, "Oh, you want me to take the heel hook? Okay, I'll take the heel hook." So he just drops back and tries to take John Allen's leg home, but is unsuccessful in doing so. If Eric Nixon can kind of get this guy's head on straight and truly get him to go out and follow a proper game plan, this guy's going to be an absolute killer. I think he has a very good chance to be a top 10 guy if he can go out there and actually implement a solid game plan. The guy's strong, the guy's big. It seems like he has the cardio. He has a decent grappling background too. And I do favor him in this fight. You can, so minus 125, not too bad of a line. Dolidze to win by submission plus 405. We already know that Trevin Giles has 2 submission losses on his record, I believe, to Zach Cummings and Gerald Mearshart. And then also if if you think it gets strung out a little bit more, plus 415 on Dolidze by decision isn't a bad spot either. The main thing we want to see, and we'll obviously cover this on tomorrow's stream, is how he looks at the weigh-ins. First time down at 185 for the UFC on short notice. Was he truly in shape, or is he going to be sucking himself down to get to 185 pounds? We'll find that out tomorrow, but at least pre-fight, and given what we know from their skills, I lean Dolidze here, and I think he can either snatch up a sub or a decision, both around that plus 400 mark. I think are solid lines. How are you seeing this one?
You got to see the weigh-ins, right? I mean, that's the $1 million question. Roman Dolidze, when he was kind of, before he came to the UFC, he was a grappler, right? That was kind of his fundamental base. He's the ADCC Oceania champion. He was the 2013 FILA World Grappling Champion. And that all came in like the 99 kilogram category, which would be 218 pounds. So he's fighting as a small heavyweight as a grappler. Then he comes to MMA and he's a 205-pound guy. Wins a couple fights, beat John Allen. That's a credible victory. Split decision, bullshit. Guy clearly won he clearly won the fight. I don't know why it was a split, but
yeah.
All the same, that's at 205 pounds. And John Allen's a physical guy. John Allen's a strong guy. I mean, that's a credible little win at 205 pounds. And I think he's developing. He's getting better. He's with Eric Nixick full-time out of Extreme Couture. He's making those improvements. But by his own account, he's like, I walk around at 205.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. Obviously, he grappled at his walk-around weight, which was billed as 218 pounds. As far as MMA goes, he probably just trims down a little bit. Now he's fighting at 205. And now he's going to make that move to 185 pounds. That's all well and good. The move to 185 is a 20-pound jump, right? It's not an easy weight cut. It's not like you're dropping from lightweight to featherweight, which is a 10-pound gap. It's essentially, for a lot of these weight classes, it'd be 2 full weight class jump. So again, a little bit question marks that we want to see the scales. But again, that's not my key problem here. My key problem here is that this was originally Trevin Giles taking on Dricus du Plessis, right? So you have Roman Dolidze coming on short notice, cutting down to 185. So, that's a little bit of a concern. Is that no doubt about it, you give this guy sufficient time and planning, he could cut down. He says he walks around 205, 20-pound weight cut for a UFC fighter. Not crazy. I think he could do it. But to be able to do it on short notice, like, is he going to shock his body? Is he going to hurt his body? And all of a sudden, is it going to affect his cardio? And the key to beating Trevin Giles is don't have cardio problems, because he has cardio problems. You need to get this guy to the third round. His game falls off completely. You look at his first loss against Zach Cummings. Man, he looked really good in the first round. Second round, he's looking not quite as good. Starts to get beat. And then the third round, dude, he got dropped. He got dropped hard and then got caught in the guillotine choke. You write him a pass. Now you get the Gerald Mearshart fight. Dude, he looked good early. And then in the third round, he's absolutely gassed and he gets submitted by Gerald Mearshart. I honestly thought he's busted prospect at this point. He's actually a full-time police officer in Texas as well. Clearly, he's a guy that's dabbling a little bit, and you gotta commit. You gotta do it full-time. You can't dabble, right? And he's got a career. Maybe MMA is not the most important thing in the world to him. Here's a guy that shows regional scene victories over Larry Taekwondo Crow, Brandon Allen, Josh Clark, Og Villanueva. He beat Ryan Spann. Those are all credible wins. He's got a win over third-degree black belt Antonio Braga Nito, where he knocked him out in the third round. Loses to Zach Cummings and Jared Mearshart. That's not the end of the world. A win over James Krause, even though he took it on like 24 hours notice of a weight class. It's still a nice little win. The win over Von Lewis, but it's a nice little win. But it's just like, nothing's overwhelming there. So Dolidze is live underdog because he scores a takedown, he grinds this guy, he tires this guy out. He's gonna have his way. But you really do got to wait until weigh-ins till you take that final shot. So luckily for the fans in attendance, we got a show that comes up tomorrow on odds.com where we'll discuss that. We'll discuss exactly how he looks. Now, in terms of an actual bet for this fight, what I like is I like the over 1.5 and the over 2.5. What I like about the over 1.5 is, again, Julija is a guy that has that finishing ability. But, I mean, Giles is no slump. I mean, he's been submitted twice, both times in the third round. You got to tire this guy out. You got to work this guy over. And fighting out a Fortis MMA, which, everybody who watches this show knows, MMA Lock of the Night's favorite gym. But real quick, I'm not sure if Kevin Holland's still there, but you've got Kevin Holland. You've got, just real quick, Cheyanne buys, Macy Chiasson, Trevin Giles, JP buys. They're all out of Fortis MMA, right? They've got a ton of fighters on the card. I believe Adrian Yanez might be there. Regardless, it's like, the gym's doing good things. These guys are getting better. He's going to be in good shape. He's going to come out, hopefully gives a good account of himself. But yeah, I mean, he's probably going to get tired later in the fight. He's tough. He's durable. He's hard to take down. He's got a very intelligent jab, and he seems composed till the third round. But regardless, this is over 1.5. And I like the over 2.5, same thing. It's plus money. If Roman wins this fight, I think he takes him down. He controls him. He takes him out later. We've seen Giles getting taken out later. If Giles goes out there and gets the victory, he's going to use that jab. He's going to stuff the takedowns. He's going to keep the fight standing. He's going to tire out Roman, work the body, and then look to take him out later. So I'm not going to jump fight goes the distance. Normally when if I bet over 2.5, I take fight goes the distance. What I'm going to do is I take over 1.5, over 2.5. And then, the smallest sprinkle, I actually ended up looking at Giles by decision plus 305. But I can't pull the trigger on that until I see the weigh-ins. I'm thinking Dolidze is going to be a little bit compromised. Again, he hasn't fought to the same level, but he's a much bigger guy. And Giles actually looked a little bit reinvigorated against Bevon Lewis, but when you consider it's Bevon Lewis, it could be just the same old Trevin Giles trickery. What I am happy with is he's got a full camp. Hopefully no excuses for tiring out. He's still only 28 years old. And we talked about all those regional scene wins. He had a great regional scene run. He's been fighting top-level competition or solid guys at the very least in the UFC, and he's still young and getting better. He shores up a couple mistakes. He's legit. So I think he's got a shot here. It's just, I think at the very least, over 1.5 is the play. That's my favorite play of this fight. I'm going to take a shot on the over 2.5 as well. Small sprinkle Giles by decision, but Roman Dolidze is live underdog if that's your foray.
Yeah, I believe the round 3 prop on Dolidze is actually plus 900. So if you think he has finishing capabilities late in this fight, coupled with the cardio issues of one Trevin Giles, that's definitely a very juicy prop for sure. All right, let's move on to the next fight. We got Grant Dawson going up against Leonardo Santos. Minus 190 for Grant Dawson, plus 165 for Leonardo Santos. This fight kind of reminds me of like Islam Makhachev versus Davy Hamosh or Ben Askren versus Damian Maia, where you have a guy that's so good at wrestling and so good at grappling and usually chooses that route to win his fights, going up against a high-level jiu-jitsu player who, usually gets the fight done with their jiu-jitsu as well. So you got Dawson, obviously a very good grappler, very good wrestler, more often than not goes out there, grinds his opponents or finds a submission. And then Santos, mainly a jiu-jitsu player, but going out there and just bombing on fools and knocking these guys out. That Stevie Ray knockout was probably one of my favorite knockouts of all time, just given how Stevie Ray slumps over after getting hit by that bomb from Leonardo Santos. But that still doesn't look over the fact that Leonardo Santos is coming into this fight at a ripe prime age of 41 years old. Weird to me that he's been in the UFC since 2013 and is on a 7-fight unbeaten streak. The guy has yet to be beaten inside the UFC, beating guys to have the name of like Kevin Lee and Stevie Ray most notably. But I think his time is just starting to pass him by. He still shows decent takedown defense, especially in his last fight against Roman Bogotov, where he shucked off 10 out of 11 attempts. And then obviously won that fight after Bogotov got 2 points taken off just because of he's a dumbass fighter. Literally one of the only times I think I've ever seen the UFC cut a guy after a fight. Just one fight, they're like, this guy doesn't even know how to fight. Apparently he has 10 fights on his record. Didn't look like it that night. So they cut him right after that. But Leonardo Santos gets his hand raised there. But one thing we truly see there is his cardio, man. It just falls off a cliff and it just does not look good the later this fight goes. Whereas Grant Dawson coming up a weight class here, I feel like we'll see an improved gas tank from him. I think we'll see him go out there and actually control this fight, go out there and land his calf kicks. That's something very well, something that he does very well. James Krause trained as well. That's something that they're trying to implement with their camp. And I feel like this is going to play out similar to Makhachev versus Ramos, where we see Grant go out there and probably just toy on the feet, stay out of the way of the big shots from Santos, kind of soften up that lead leg, start to suck the juice and the wind out of Leonardo Santos, and then start leaning on his grappling later in this fight. But either way, I see this fight going the full 15 minutes. I do think we see the younger, more explosive guy and stronger guy, who I think will be Grant Dawson here, win a decision, and him to win via decision is plus 120. I'm just not the most keen on going on betting his money line here at minus 190. I think it's a little bit too wide. I still feel like there are some question marks about him. And Leonardo Santos, man, the guy just continues to turn the clock back and keeps pulling off these decisions when people don't think that he should be doing so, even when he's having these extended layoffs too, right? I believe the night he beat Roman Bogatov was July of last year. Yeah, their first pay-per-view on Fight Island way back at UFC 251. So, he's approaching closer to like that 10-month period since he's been outside of the cage. I'm not sure if that's a benefit for him. Maybe it is, considering that he hasn't lost in the UFC now, and more often than not, he's going out there and having these year to year and a half layoffs and still coming back and competing. But I think that Grant Dawson is just a little bit too far ahead at this point in time. I think the kid will be smart enough to stay away from the big power, smart enough to stay away from that high-level jiu-jitsu, and then start grappling the later this fight goes and the more that Santos starts to slow down. So I like I like Dawson plus 120 on the decision line. I don't mind that either. How are you seeing this one?
Yes, this is a sweet little fight. I actually really like it. So Grant Dawson's actually coming out from 145 pounds, but tell me 155 is not the weight class for him, man. I mean, the guy's way too big. You look at his last fight, he's actually a catch weight of 150. You look at the Derek Minner fight, he missed weight by 4 pounds. I just feel like 45 was taking a lot out of him, and his frame, I mean, the kind of muscle that he has, his upper body especially, it's like, yeah, 55 will be a good weight class for him. So even though he's coming up against Leo Santos, I don't think it's going to be one of these cases of he won't be as strong or he's giving up some physicality. I think that's going to be his best weapon here, is that he's way stronger. Now with Leo Santos, I mean, this guy, if you want to create a well-rounded fighter, Leo Santos has got all the skills, man. His striking has come a long way, but he's a guy that knocked out Kevin Lee, shattered his ankle, that clean right hand straight down the middle, drops him real bad. And whereas I, at the time, thought maybe fluke knockout, the Stevie Ray knockout, it's like, no, this guy spent a lot of time working on his hands, and he's got a lot of power. Kevin Lee's got a solid chin. Stevie Ray's got a very solid chin, and he touches them, they go to sleep. On top of that, he's a 7-time world jiu-jitsu champion. He has a flying armbar victory over Georges St. Pierre grappling competition. But, I mean, the guy's got all the skills in the world. And yet, Father Time is the one opponent that remains undefeated. And at 41 years old, one thing about Leo Santos is his cardio is just awful. It's always been awful. If he gets that first round knockout like he did against Kevin Lee, or, the Kevin Lee fight, I don't know. You could call it a submission, you call it a knockout, you call it whatever, but, finishes it early in the first round. Finishes the Stevie Ray fight early in the first round. It's when he doesn't get these first round finishes, his cardio just completely falls off a cliff. I want to go back all the way to, say, like the Norman Park fight, gassed out in the third. The Efren Escudero fight is 1-1 going into the third, and he's completely gassed out, ends up winning. But it's like cardio's an issue. The Adriano Martins fight, that's right after the Kevin Lee fight. I mean, gassed. All 3 judges give the fight, the third round for Adriano Martins. 1 judge scores the fight for him. Media members largely tend to favor Adriano Martins on that side. But nothing happens, and it's a split decision that goes Leo Santos' way. But again, keep in mind, this is just another trend that he got really tired in that fight. Then he gets a 3-year-long layoff, comes back after 3 years, and knocks out Stevie Ray first round. Now the Bogatov fight should be a layup here, right? It's like, what's Bogatov going to do to him? Is he going to take him down? Good luck. Is he going to stand with him? I don't know, man. Leo Santos just knocked out Stevie Ray. His hands have come a long way. Even though he absolutely beats Bogatov those first 2 rounds, even though Bogatov is gassed out and gets a 2-point deduction in the third, all 3 judges still gave the third round to Bogatov. Why? Because Leo Santos is gassed. He is just so freaking tired, man. The technique goes out the window. The power is gone. The takedown defense isn't quite there anymore. The output falls off a cliff mightily. Like, all of that's a big-time problem. And the thing with Grant Dawson is, my one issue is that he did put his neck into a lot of bad spots against Derek Minner. Derek Minner was wrenching on all sorts of nasty. You don't want to put yourself in those same positions against Leo Santos. But he gritted all those spots out. He got out of all those chokes, and then he grinded down Derek Minner and put a beating on him. And that's what I expect here as well. I expect that he is going to pursue takedowns and mostly, get this guy up against the cage, grind him, peel him to the ground, suck some energy out of him, Work that ground and pound. He's got big ground and pound, this kid, right? Keep working on him. James Krause, Glory MMA and Fitness, they're going to have a great game plan that revolves around neutralizing this guy, tiring him, and then putting on a pace on him. So we're on the same page. You nailed all the points that I want to make. You also nailed that we were going to probably go with Grant Dawson by decision, plus 120. I like that. And then the one little thing, this is my tribute to you because you love these little plays. Grant Dawson, 3rd round finish, right? I know.
Yeah,
plus 1475, right? So Leo Santos always gets tired, and he's always really vulnerable in those 3rd rounds. The unfortunate part is the opponent's a little bit tired. They're not pushing the pace on him. It's a slower pace fight. Grant Dawson just comes at you, and fighting up a weight class, one's going to imagine he's at a good weight cut, and he's going to have energy, and he's going to feel good, and wants to go out there and put a statement in his lightweight debut, put it on this guy, seek that 3rd round finish, plus 1475. So where I do agree, the decision prop is probably the way to go, and I have the decision prop is plus 120. At that price tag, near 15 to 1, I'm going to have a little shot at that for sure.
I think that's the most confident I've ever heard you speak about a round 3 prop. So people, if you guys are watching this, you might want to sprinkle a little bit on that plus 1400. I'm surprised it kind of passed my gaze, to be honest. But I definitely see your spot and your angle on that one. And we have all the historical data to back that up as well. So I'm looking forward to this fight, and hopefully we can catch her on that round 3 prop. All right, let's move on to the next one. We got the prelim headliner here between Marion Reneau and Macy Chiasson. Obviously, they were scheduled to fight initially on the February 6th card. I believe Reneau contracted COVID. She had to pull out. They rescheduled this fight roughly a month and a half later. And we still get the same line, minus 210 on Macy Chiasson, plus 175 on Marion Reneau. And I still feel the same way. Say what you want about Marion Reneau being 43 years old. This chick, she only started fighting professional MMA at the age of 33. So she's still, quite young, or if you want to call it, in her MMA career. She doesn't have the fight miles that these fighters have when they're starting their careers at 19, 20, 21 years old. And she shows decent technique. You know what I mean? Technically speaking, I think she's the better fighter than Macy Chiasson. But Chiasson is just younger, bigger, stronger, and she's always getting away with just bullying her opponents. And now if you want to talk about level of competition here, Marion Reneau absolutely blows her out of the water, stepping in there against girls like Julija, Avila, Holly Holm, Raquel Pennington, Yana Kunitskaya. Like, she's fought pretty much everyone at that 135-pound division, and she's won a couple of those fights, and obviously right now she's on a 3-fight losing streak. Macy Chiasson, on the other hand, what's her best win? Sarah Moras? No, not Sarah Moras. Shanna Young coming up from 125 pounds on short notice and still goes out there and almost gasses out in that 3rd round, trying to bully her and push her up against the cage. Yeah, no. I think Chiasson is talented, don't get me wrong, but I think she still has a long way to go. She's still very green. She's only had 6 MMA fights in her career. We have 15 on Marion Reneau's side, not to mention the level of competition she's gone up to. And yeah, I'm expecting Chiasson to win the 1st round, maybe win the 2nd round, but she's going to start gassing a little bit in that 3rd round. And if you guys go back and watch the Shanna Young fight, man, she makes some mistakes in that 3rd round. Luckily for her, Shanna Young isn't the greatest fighter either, so she was able to still capitalize on that 3rd round and win the decision regardless. But when she's like bullying her up against the cage and really overextending to try to impose her will, she like falls off the top sometimes, and she kind of just, she just, again, overextends herself. And that's where I think that Reneau will have success in taking advantage of that. 4 out of the 9 wins in Reneau's career have come in rounds 2 and round 3, and she definitely does get stronger as the fight goes on. Even in fights that she loses, the Yana Kunitskaya fight, she's down 2 rounds going into that 3rd round, goes out there and absolutely busts her ass in that 3rd round. Doesn't get a 10-8 or anything like that, but still shows that she can go out there and her durability will hold up. So, if Chiasson puts her out in the first 2 rounds, that'll be the first time anybody has finished Marion Reneau. So that's something to note of there. But if this fight does reach the 3rd round and we see Chiasson go out there and implement the same game plan that she's always been doing, which is just pushing these women up against the cage, muscling her opponents, she's going to be sucking one in that 3rd round. I think we'll see Marion Reneau truly take over and possibly even find a finish here. So the spot that I'm looking at, round 3, plus 1,700, Marion Reneau, and then even Marion Reneau via submission, black belt, Marion Reneau, plus 750 via submission. So, I like Reneau here. I think she gets it done late. And that's my women's MMA take for the week, which has been pretty on point in 2021. Hopefully it comes to fruition once again so I can keep this crown of mine. Am I crazy? Talk me down a little bit.
No, you're not crazy. I mean, Marion Reneau is the gift that keeps on giving. Like, this chick is a OG badass as far as I'm concerned, in that, like you said, she turns pro at 33, okay? She's a full-time gym teacher. By her own account, she tries out for the Ultimate Fighter, Dana White says to her, you're too old, right? The cutoff's 35 years old. She's like 36 and a half or 37. He's like, you're too old. She gets into the UFC regardless. And I remember she beats Alexis Dufresne as an underdog. And on the microphone, she says, I just started fighting as a way to put a little bit of money aside for my daughter's college tuition. This is just some fun times, I want to give it my old college go. And most people don't remember this. Derek Lewis said something similar in his first post fight, where he's like, I'm trying to get enough money to buy a house, and then I'm done. Don't want to do this. Don't want to fight. It was like, man, but these people, they got something. They got perseverance, and age is just a number. Marion Reneau is just always in extremely good shape. You talked about durability. Yeah, she's never been finished. She always puts a trepid pace on all of her opponents, and I mean, she's known for breaking girls down. It's not even like it's just the one time. Oh yeah, and she did really bang up Yanez Kunakaya. By the way, look at the hospital pictures from Yanez Kunakaya after this fight. Get back at me. Her face is wrecked, man. Yeah. She was in a fight that night. But you look at all these fights, she's always coming in that third round and giving you her best go. The Sarah McMahon fight, she loses the first. She comes back in the second and she gets her. Toledo Barnardo, she just puts a beating on her, takes her in the third round. The Holly Holm fight, she goes the distance with Holly Holm. Like, who expected any of that? She has a win over Jessica Andrade once upon a time.
My finish.
I know, my submission triangle choke was crazy after getting dumped, like huge slam too. But it's like, here's a girl that always perseveres. Now, she's originally trained by former WEC light heavyweight champ Doug the Rhino Marshall, and she has that super aggressive style, fundamentally sound Muay Thai. They call her the Belizean Bruiser because she's from Belize, but they called her the Bruiser because she would spar with all male training partners and then apparently just land knees to the body. They'd go to the nuts. That's why they called her the Belizean Bruiser. Training partners gave her the name. But like, it's another testament to her attitude and her willingness to just get in there and engage with anybody. She'll fight all comers, 43 years young. And if you were to ask her, yeah, she's got some goods here. Now, where does she win this fight? Well, Macy Chiasson showed in the Lena Landsberg fight. They're like, she's not very good off her back, man. And so a strong BJJ black belt with a, good base, good hips, takes her down, will control some of these rounds. I mean, she can do exactly that. As far as the fight stays standing, Macy Chiasson's big. She's gangly. She's strong. But if you push her backwards, she's not a very good counterpuncher, and she doesn't have very good footwork. So Marion Reneau has passed a victory there too. But, we talk about, is Leo Santos too old? He's 41. Is Marion Reneau too old? She's 43. She's on a 3-fight losing streak. She hasn't won in a number of years. Her best days are likely behind her, despite that she's going to give you a best effort. So for me, I like this fight goes the distance minus 180. It's minus 180, which is not crazy in my opinion, but neither girl has been finished professionally. Macy Chiasson's one loss to Lena Landsberg. She just got grinded on the ground. Marion Reneau, she's got a hell of a chin. She's got good submission defense, and she's known to grind as well. She's got a couple late third round finishes, but Chiasson showed she's tough. Chiasson's also been off a year and a half, Fortis MMA. No doubt she's going to come in here and have made improvements, but all these improvements lead to a fight going the distance. So I like that. It covers you either side if you can't get a good beat on. Is Reneau a little too old at 43, or is she primed for a dog spot? Chiasson, she kind of looks like a busted prospect, but she's one of the bigger girls in the division, and she's still young and green in her career. That some time off probably would have helped her. If you can't quite decide, fight goes the distance minus 180. And I've been saying in recent episodes, like, I know people don't like playing that, or they don't like playing these fight goes the distance minus 200. Like, if this was, I don't know, if you're a hockey bettor and you bet the Calgary Flames, they're minus 200, you really like them. Maybe a fair line. If you're betting football, you know what I mean? If that's a money line, that's a pretty fair line. But as far as like a fight goes the distance, people like the plus money stuff. People like the even money stuff. But I think this is a good spot at minus 180. I think that's a good price. And this one's likely going 3 rounds.
I'd prefer the over 2.5, as I still think that Reneau will be live for that finish late in this fight. But I'm really excited to finally at least put this fight to bed, man. Since we've been talking about it since February, I'm kind of sick and tired of talking about it at this point in time, especially with getting ragged on by picking Marion Reneau to win this fight. Everybody's on Macy Chiasson and ragging on the fact that Reneau is the oldest fighter in the UFC. But, when you watch some of her fights, she still goes out there, makes a good account of herself. And let's put one more thing out there. The last 3 losses that she has, Pennington, Zingano, and Kunitskaya, if they were all matched up against Macy Chiasson, who do you think wins those matchups? I think those are very close fights, and I'd probably take at least 2 of those women to beat Chiasson as well.
Yeah. I was going to say, did I mention she's a gym teacher? Her entire day revolves around being in shape. It could be like, I'll work out in first period, third period, and fourth period. You get 3 workouts a day just right there. So yeah, no doubt she's a professional. She always comes in shape. Her daughter's probably in college now, and it's already been paid for. But Mama Bear knows what she's doing. So I think she's a live underdog. I don't know if I got the cojones to bet a 43-year-old. So I'm going to take fight goes the distance. That's where my money will lay.
It's all good. I'm with you right there. She did get a performance of the night against Jessica Andrade, so I'm sure that 50 G's maybe definitely went pretty well to that college fund for her daughter. All right, let's move on to the next fight. We got the first fight of the prelims. Before we get to it, please do make sure you guys hit that like button. We got over close to 200 people in the chat now. We're only at 66 likes. I'm not liking that ratio here, so make sure you guys go hit that like and support your boys. All right, let's move on to the next fight here. Like I said, first fight on the prelims. We got another women's MMA fight down at strawweight this time. We got the debut of both fighters here. Cheyanne Bays versus Montserrat Ruiz, who's 9-1, 5-1 on the base side. Heavy chalk on one Cheyanne Bays, who's coming in at -340, plus 280 on Ruiz. The last thing I saw of Ruiz was her Invicta fight, where she was in the main event and submitted that woman with a beautiful scarf hold key lock choke, where she was able to position the arm with her legs and then torque on it and get the submission there. Very, very beautiful work on the ground for sure. But Bays just seems like she will almost have her beat everywhere. Am I willing to kind of trust her at -250? Not really. I think she'll be able to kind of outstrike her on the feet when the fight does get into the clinch position. I love what I see from Bays. You know, she does a good job of kind of placing her forehead on the chin and the chest of her opponent, pushing them up against the cage, breaking their posture, and really getting that dirty boxing going. And then at distance as well, she shows really good competency with her striking, keeping that range. She's going to have a 3-inch height as well as, I believe, a 2-inch reach advantage in this fight. And you better believe she's going to be using all 3 inches of that height and 2.5 inches of that reach. If this fight does get close, though, in terms of Ruiz closing the distance and trying to drag this to the ground, I think that's kind of her best way to win this fight. Now, Ruiz is a King's MMA product under Rafael Cordero, but I just don't see that killer type of Rafael Cordero type of striker from her. She seems like she's okay with being outstruck from the outside. Heck, Danielle Taylor, 5'0" Danielle Taylor goes out there and outstrikes her in the first 2 rounds, lose the 3rd round, but still does a good job of, obviously getting the judge's decision. I think that Bays is a little bit further along than Taylor, but I still think that there are some things that we need to kind of see her shore up. Again, she's super young. I believe she's 23, 24 years old. She's 5-1. She doesn't have the biggest record or most extensive record yet. So let's pause the brakes on a -350 here. Let's just see how she actually competes inside the UFC before we're willing to go out there and actually pay that type of chalk here. But the spot I do like, obviously the overs, -250 on the over 2.5. It Bays, the majority, if not all of her victories have come via decision. So rather than playing her straight, just take that -250 because Ruiz has shown solid durability. Right, she's only lost 1 time. She's in the fight pretty much the entire time, but Bays does a good job of kind of keeping fights at her pace, fighting at her pace, and then obviously going on to win decisions. So Bays -340, not a good money line. Over 2.5, -250, not too shabby. And then obviously Bays by decision is -150. Again, a little bit too chalky for a decision prop for my liking, especially with somebody as unproven as Cheyanne Bays, but that is probably the most likely outcome in this fight. How are you seeing this one?
Yeah. I most likely outcome I see in this fight would probably be another decision. This one's -215. So again, not that good of a price tag. But yeah, I think you got Bays comes in. She's initially supposed to take on Kay Hansen. So that's a tough fight. Kay Hansen's, good striker, but really good on the ground. She's extremely young and she's only getting better. So this is going to be a tough spot for her. And her husband's on the card. Is that going to affect her mentally? He's first fight on the card. So, if he loses, is that going to affect anything? Was he planning on maybe cornering you? What's that dynamic like? You don't know. But all I'm saying is a fight with Kay Hansen would have been very tough. Hansen bails out. You get Montserrat Ruiz on short notice. And again, this is very tough because Montserrat Ruiz is a completely different style. Here's a girl that's fought 5 rounds and her cardio checked out, man. Yeah. I mean, and she's 5 feet tall. Talk about a difficult opponent to game for. But she's one of these crisp, I shouldn't say crisp, but she's a Mexican boxer. She likes to let the hands go. She comes forward. Paul Shaughnessy's big on the fact that she's got a neck tag, which I agree, dude. I've never seen a fighter with a neck tag go backwards, especially in women's MMA.
Not to mention she has the clown from the It tattooed on her freaking calf as well. This girl loves horror movies, apparently.
Yeah, but that's the thing is that she's mean, She's mean and she goes out there and she tries to put it on you. And with Cheyanne Bays, she's making her debut. Again, we've already talked about the narrative that her husband's on the card. Maybe that affects her negatively. But if Montserrat Ruiz just backs her up, lets her hands go and tries to work her a little bit, then she becomes a live underdog. And I think that when the line to open in its Bays -250 or Bays -250, then that's fair. That's a fair price tag. But You're still getting a debut fighter. You're still getting, women's MMA. We all know anything that can happen. And Ruiz is not a walkover. Yeah, she's taking the fight on ultra short notice, but apparently she thought she was getting signed anyways. So she'd been training, getting ready for a fight, takes this fight. And again, we're going to have to wait to see weigh-ins, but I don't think she's going to look out of shape. But the line has now shifted from -250 to -340. It got as high as -360, I believe. And now it just seems that there's no value there. So where do we see this fight going? Well, Cheyanne Beza, she's got 6-1, and the last 6 of them, or she's 5-1. The last 5 of them have gone decision. She finished her pro debut. She won by TKO, and outside of that, the next 5 fights have all gone the distance. I mean, she's someone that likes to control the action with the wrestling. She's got good forward pressure. She's got good output. She herself has good cardio. I can see her trying to push the pace, get Montserrat Ruiz's back up against the cage, try to mix in a couple takedowns, but just go out there and try to out-volume her. But Ruiz is going to hold her ground and let her hands fly as well. When you look at Ruiz, yeah, she's got a nasty scarf hold submission her last time out, but let's just say, right? I mean, Janessa Mirandin, babe, but she's actually on a 3 currently. That was a third straight loss. But Emily Ducote knocked her out in the first round, and Verna Jandanova submitted her in the second. Right, so she's been finished very quickly in her last 3 fights. Again, world class competition. Let me remind you, but maybe didn't check out. Outside of that submission, she went 5 rounds against Saraj Sayenz on the regional scene. She went the distance with Soraya Roscoe. And then her wins, dude. 0-0 opponent, 0-2 opponent, 1-1 opponent. She went the distance with the 7-2 opponent. Well, of course, because that's a decent record. That was a decent opponent. This is the UFC, man. She's not going to go and walk out there, I don't think, and knock out or submit Cheyanne Buys. I think Cheyanne Buys I think they're both going to fight relatively competitive, be a close enough fight. But I think the thing goes the distance. It's -215. That's not the most prettiest of price tags, but I don't think that there's a strong lean on the other side. If I want to chase Buys by decision, because again, she's a big favorite. Maybe I want to make it better. Cody thinks she's going to win. Cody thinks the fight goes the distance. So why not try to juice and get? It's -160. It wasn't like it's still a big price tag for what you're getting out of this matchup. The Montserrat Ruiz by decision, if you were willing to just take the underdog, and again, this fight's going to decision, it's +490. So she goes out there, stuffs a few takedowns, lets her hands fly, lands the more eye-catching shots, and squeaks out a close, maybe even a split, maybe even a greasy decision. +490 will have been well worth it, right? The fight goes the distance, -215. Oddsmaker agrees, goes the decision. Buys to win that decision, -160. It's not a good price. The flip side to that, Ruiz to win the decision, is a huge price. I feel like that's where the value side would be. But again, I don't bet all these underdogs just because, they got a shot and this and that, and it's probability. And I mean, I'm a degenerate, so I put small sprinkles in everything, but I don't know that I would say Montserrat Ruiz is one of my go-to plays this week. I'm just looking at this fight to go the distance, and I'm -215. Maybe I parlay that up with something else, but both girls show some durability. Both girls show, a little bit of ability here. I think that it's going to be a relatively close fight that goes 15.
We saw a Contender Series, a women's MMA fighter last week fall flat on her face. That could absolutely happen this weekend as well, too. And you're asking for trouble if you're willing to pay -350 on a UFC newcomer like this. Shout out to our guy Freddie Freeballing in the chat, kind of in a sideways way, going out there and suggesting we should do a Team Bays versus Team De La Rosa fight night, where we got Mark De La Rosa going up against JP, and we got Montana going up against one Cheyanne here. I think we'd go 1-1 there with De La Rosa taking the women's fight and Bays beating De La Rosa here. But one can dream. One can dream for some type of fight night like that. All right, let's move things along. Next up, we got Max Griffin going up against Kenan Song. We got Max Griffin. Last time I saw him, he was at -200, and he's still at that point, -210, -200, and then +175 on Song Kenan. I feel like if you go back and watch the Song Kenan versus Alex Morono fight, that's pretty much the best blueprint you can put out there to beat a guy like Kenan, or even take that second round from Derek Krantz where he just gets the takedown and kind of just rides him out. But in the Alex Morono fight, you're a guy that has been kind of banging on Morono, not going out there and shooting takedowns. He didn't need a takedown to go out there and outstrike one Kenan Song. He stayed active in that fight, stayed on the outside, threw a jab here and there, threw a combination here and there, let his kicks go and stayed on the outside and stayed away from the big power of Kenan Song. And I feel like given what we saw from Max Griffin's last fight against Ramiz Brahimaj, he is capable of doing that. Like, I think he's never been finished in the UFC outside of that Colby Covington ground and pound, but that was a ground and pound finish, not a standing KO knockout. He's been or there's only been one knockdown that he's conceded, which was to Alex Morono. But he seems quite durable. His chin is still there. He should be able to go out there and kind of dance around Kenan Song here and just take this fight via decision. I think that's the approach here. If he wants to go in there and mix in takedowns and trying to, take away the amount of resistance that he's going to have to deal with from Kenan, that's probably the best way to go. But I think even if he just stays on the outside, he should be able to pick apart Kenan and take this fight via decision. So even the over 2.5 minus 200 is not too bad of a line. Griffin by decision is plus 115. Now, Griffin, you're talking about a guy that just lost to Thiago Alves how many fights ago in 2018, 2019? Not the type of loss that you want to have on your record. And even his last little stretch of fights, just not the most impressive outside of his Ruiz fight where he just elbowed the ear off my man's head. But I still feel like he should be able to go out there and put together a solid enough game plan to in my opinion, beat a one-dimensional Kenan Song, who's mainly just a striker. If he's not able to knock you out or at least record a knockdown in every single round, I don't see him really winning a decision in this spot. So I lean Griffin. I lean him to win by decision, staying out on the outside. And again, plus 115, not too shabby. How are you seeing this one?
You know what? So Griffin, it's a lot of like, you know how MMA is. It's like, oh, what have you done for me lately? And you look at him, he's in his mid-30s now, and he wins a fight, he loses a fight, he squeaks one out, this and that. You go back and you re-watch all those fights, you re-tape study this. He's honestly just, the beneficiary of some really bad luck at times. You just look at his recent run, right? So he loses to Cowboy Oliveira, right? It's a split decision. One judge thought he won. A couple media members scored it for him. But it's a good fight. And in the third round, he pulls it into his domain. It's a little too late. The Alex Morono fight, which he loses by unanimous decision. Pile of media members scored the fight for him. And in the third round, once he got his wrestling going, he's putting it on Alex Morono. You look at the Imadaev fight. It's a majority decision, yet he completely controlled Zelim Imadaev.
6 takedowns.
The Thiago Alves fight, he lost a split decision. In what world did he lose that fight? He went out there and he beat Thiago Alves' ass. He dropped him. Unfortunately, it's in Brazil. Thiago Alves is a legend. The fight went the distance. They were going to screw him, and they screw Max Griffin. Here's a guy that can be very easily on a very lengthy, good-looking winning streak. Unfortunately, he doesn't always get those nods, doesn't always get those decisions. And as a result, you go and you look back and you think, oh, he's 1-2 in his last 3. He's 2-2 of his last 4. He's 2-4 over his last 6 fights. Not that good. But when you give him one thing, right? Alex Oliveira, Alex Morono, Thiago Alves, Mike Perry, Zaleski dos Santos, Colby Covington. These are all good fighters, man. He goes out there against good fighters. He's got a really long, accurate jab, pieces you up from the outside, decent kick game. But one thing that we haven't really always been talking about Max Griffin along his fights, we always talk about him, long man, the jab, state of the outside, use that striking. Just basically what he did against Mike Perry, just matador the guy, You have that long, rangy striking game. You are accurate. You are fundamentally sound. You have decent hand speed. Just beat them with the range. But yeah, and I think you kind of touched base on this. Like, Max Griffin can grapple, man. Max Griffin's actually got some decent grappling. You don't always see it, no, but 2 takedowns against Alex Oliveira, and he controlled him with the grappling. The Alex Morono fight, 4 takedowns, and largely dominated him in that third round. Zelim Imadaev, 6 takedowns. Thiago Alves, 2 takedowns. He took down Chris Molinder, which, who hasn't, right? But you got what I'm saying. It's like he actually doesn't mind going to his wrestling. And with Song Kenan, dude got taken down by Hector Aldana. Like, dude's been giving out takedowns to a lot worse opponents. And you even see that in his last fight against Calvin Potter. He does get taken down. Fortunately, he gets back up and he knocks Calvin Potter out. But all of his wins have just been the absolute, because how we just talked about a long list of very credible opponents for Max Griffin. When you look at Song Kenan, his wins in the UFC are Bobby Nash, Hector Aldana, Derek Krantz, Calvin Potter. All 4 guys released. He has a loss to Alex Morono, who's a fringe top 20 guy. And then I was talking about Paul this. I was like, does anybody have an example of this modern era? He signed to the UFC on a 2-fight losing streak. Signed to the UFC. Can you even think of anybody? No, but they're going to China. They need a local Chinese fighter to fill that demographic. This guy, he's got a fun, exciting style. He's still young. Throw him on there, and they give him some winnable fights, and he goes out there and he wins those winnable fights. He took a slight step up in competition against Alex Morono, and he failed that step up in competition. Now he's going to take on Max Griffin. Max Griffin's legit. Max Griffin's got skills everywhere. And I think he's got a bit of a chip on his shoulder that he loses some of these close fights. So I think that there's more of a feeling of urgency out of him. Do a little bit more. And if he does a little bit more, he should be securing these. So yeah, the play here is I went with Max Griffin. I went fight goes the distance. Again, there's another one I think goes the distance, which is -190, and then Griffin by decision +115. I just want to see him go out there, get those takedowns, secure the takedowns, hold him down, beat him on the ground. Fight stays standing. He comes at you a little bit, use the jab, circle out, make him work a little bit. But ultimately, grind this guy back down, take him back down. He's got porous takedown defense. You got decent wrestling. Use that, use your grappling to your advantage. And I see the fight go in the distance with Griffin coming on the positive side of that. So 15-minute Griffin decision. And, for plus money, I'll take it.
I think if you're not taking Song Kenan by KO at +430, you're leaving some money on the table if you think he wins this fight, because I think that's probably his only win condition in this fight. But yeah, I'm glad that me and you both agree on Griffin here and via decision. One fight I don't see going to a decision is up next. We got Adrian Yanez coming in against Gustavo Lopez. We have Yanez obviously as a little bit of a favorite here, -230, +190 the return on Gustavo Lopez. I love what I see from Adrian Yanez. The kid's hands look amazing, super sharp, just waits for his perfect spots, very precise striker. Does a very good job in terms of staying out of the way of the big shots of his opponents. He is hittable, don't get me wrong, but in terms of like taking away the brunt of his opponent's shots, I think he does a really good job of that. He'll obviously have the size and reach advantage in this fight against Gustavo. And not just that, I think the technical aspects of his striking game are going to cause Gustavo Lopez much problems here. I expect him, Gustavo coming forward and kind of throwing his patent and winging shots, especially when he crashes forward. And I think that's kind of going to be like a bull and matador type of situation with Yanez landing the Christmas shots down the middle, kind of putting out Lopez, whether it's in the first or second round. The spot here, though, that I think is quite intriguing, and I wish I remember the guy's name that brought it up on Twitter because I want to give him a shout out for this. But Yanez to win by submission is +1,400. And I got Yanez is a black belt in a similar situation where Yanez does not have any submission victories on his pro MMA record.
He does. Way back when.
He does that, okay, on his professional career. One guy that it does remind me of was Miguel Baeza, who never had any professional wins on his record via submission, and came into that Takashi Sato fight as a +900 submission prop there, and that's something that a lot of people were able to capitalize on. So maybe a club and sub situation here with Lopez if you want to chase that +1,400, but even him to win by KO plus 150, I think is a solid spot. I think Lopez is going to have trouble closing that distance and getting his game going. Even though he has a little bit of a background in wrestling, I think that it's going to cause him some troubles in terms of closing that distance. And we've seen on the regional scene when Yanez goes up against much more credentialed and better wrestlers like one Miles Johns and Domingo Palarte, he might get taken down, but he does a really good job of getting back to his feet and still going out there and dishing his own damage. So yeah, I like Yanez here. Maybe the line is a little bit too wide. I'd be willing to admit that, but I think him winning inside the distance is a solid spot anyway. So like +100 inside the distance, not too bad. +115 by KO. And if you want to get a little crazy with it, +1,400 on the sub is not too bad considering the level of black belt that Yanez actually is, even though all we've been seeing as of late is just his hands. And I think even if he just relies on just his hands, you should be able to go out there and finish our guy, Gustavo Lopez. How do you see this one?
Dude, honestly, I agree with your assessment that just because the guy doesn't show a ton of knockouts or a ton of submissions that he can't get one, right? It's just about how the fight stylistically matches up. And I was on Ilia Topuria by knockout over Damon Jackson. He had one career knockout. So people were saying, like, this is grappler versus grappler. It's like, you ever seen Damon Jackson fight? Like, he's by standing, who knows what's going to happen. And Topuria had a great game plan of ripping the body, but he went out there and he got the first round knockout. With Adrian Yanez, he does have 2 submission victories on his record, 1 triangle choke, 1 armbar, nothing in 5 years almost. But yeah, dude, the guy's got really heavy hands, and if he hurts you, he's going to take the opportunity. A guy doesn't just get a black belt from just spending time in the gym. A guy gets his black belt really dedicating himself to it. The thing is that maybe he's fallen in love with his power a little bit, maybe this and that. I just think he's young, 27, getting better all over, and he'll take whatever you can give him. Against these lower level guys, what you're giving him is the knockout. Against Gustavo Lopez is cast iron tough. And so, you see it all the time. The guy can eat 100 significant strikes to the head. I've kicked him in the head with 3 times with a head kick. I've worked his body. You look at the Casey Kinney fight versus Haile Alatang. It's like, what more can I do to him? But it's like, cut off the air supply to his brain, like put him out. Like that's how you beat a guy that's really tough. And I think with Yanez, he's got the big power, but yeah, if I'm having trouble knocking out Gustavo Lopez, taking him out of there, why not take the path of least resistance, which is take this guy down and look for a submission? So considering it's a 15-1 price, I mean, yeah, I'm sure it's a sprinkle prop, but it's something that, certainly has a chance of hitting, and it's a huge price tag. As far as the fight goes itself, the prop that I like the best is the over 1.5 rounds, which is minus 145. Now, with Adrian Yanez, yeah, he's been going out there and icing fools. But again, it comes down to level of competition. He's been icing fools that really shouldn't have been in there with him. You look at the fight with Kyle Strader, it's a closely contested split decision. You look at all of his pro losses, the Malak Johns fight, the Domenico Lopez fight, they're both closely contested split decisions. And he's got a loss to my boy, Levi Moles, way back in the day. Again, that one coming by unanimous decision. And a lot of that's they're grappling style fighters. Levi Moles is a grappler, Miles Johns is a grappler, Domenico Pilarte is a grappler. Kyle Estrada tried to mix in some grappling in there. Gustavo Lopez, I don't think he's got the grappling to go there and pose a problem for Adrian Yanez. What he does have is one of these stereotypically tough Mexican chins, baby. And Gustavo Lopez is tough. I know people keep saying, man, Andre Ewell knocked him out. Again, 3 years ago. Again, Andre Ewell, very long, awkward style, does have some power, but just has that long reach to him. But again, I think that Lopez he's 31 years old. He's full-time out of Extreme Couture in Las Vegas. He's made a lot of improvements to his game. And Rob Davashvili just tossed him around like a sack of potatoes. But he fought all the way to the end, man. He kept trying to get back up. He kept trying to scramble. He kept trying to put it on the line. It's just, unfortunately, he's outmatched in the grappling department. Then the Anthony Burchak fight, again, you see some confidence growing. You see that he's got some power. He's got some good striking. Defensively, he's not terribly, he's not unsound with his striking defense. I think that there's a lot that you can like about him. Yanez has kind of been, contender series. He knocks out a guy in 39 seconds. Now, you come to the UFC, you win with a head kick, 227 into the first round. That's driving up this narrative that this guy just knocks out everybody really fast, really fast, really fast. I think with Lopez, could knock him out. I don't think he takes him out in that under 1.5. I think this thing at least banks a round or two, and then maybe Yanez tires. We haven't seen him go later into rounds, except for when he's losing splits. Maybe Lopez gets something going. Who knows what happens? I like Adrian Yanez. I'm worried the line hasn't moved. I'm worried that, it's kind of tapped out, and I really think he should be a little bit bigger of a favorite than this. But I get an apple pie shitter almost every week, and maybe Adrian Yanez is that apple pie shitter for me. However, even if he does lose this fight, I don't think Lopez knocks him out in the first. I don't think Lopez submits him in the first. If Lopez springs the upset on him, it's coming after the over 1.5. And if Yanez wins, I think that Lopez is tough enough to survive after the 1.5. So the official play that I like the most on this one is going to be fight to go over 1.5, minus 140.
I'm really looking forward to it, though. Anytime we get to see Adrian Yanez step into the cage, I just can't wait to see what he totally flourishes into. Even on his contender series fight against Brady Wong, I think it was Paul Felder who kind of compared him to a young Jorge Masvidal or a baby Masvidal just by the way he walks, talks, and just fights. And you see it in his striking game. When he's at the top of his game, he's able to produce that knockout like he did against Brady Wong and the demolishment of AFC veteran Victor Rodriguez. But obviously, this is not AFC veteran Victor Rodriguez. We got a legitimate Gustavo Lopez here, and this should be a good test for him. At least a good way to progress his career within the UFC. Let's see if he passes this test. All right. Speaking about passing tests, we got my guy Tai Tuivasa going up against Harry Hunsucker next time around, or in this next fight. Obviously, heavy chalk on Tai Tuivasa coming in at minus 485 now, and then we got Harry Hunsucker coming in at plus 350. They just dropped the over-under, obviously at 1.5, under 1.5, opened up at, for some goddamn reason, opened up at minus 110. It's already down to minus 170. Harry Hunsucker, never been past 4 minutes in his fighting career at all. I think he has 10 or 11 fights on his record. The guy goes out there, swings bungalows. If he's not able to get the knockout, more than likely he's the one sleeping on the mat. How this fight even reaches round 3 is going to be beyond me. So the spot that I like the most, and we only have two props available to us, the over-under, and then obviously the fight doesn't go to decision. Are you kidding me? Minus 265 on the fight doesn't go to decision. Is that not the most value you've ever seen on a chalky line, considering the fact that this guy, Harry Hunsucker, will probably have a heart attack if this fight reaches round 3 because the guy is just so big, throws everything into his strikes, hoping to knock his opponent out. And if he's not successful in doing so, he's going to be the one kind of staring up at the lights here. So I'm not the biggest on Tai Tuivasa, but this seems a easy fight for him to go out there and stay away from the big shots of Harry, let Harry blow himself out, and then go out there and finish him himself. Both guys carry a ton of power, but I don't want to be laying the chalk either on Tai Tuivasa here at minus 485. I would much rather take the fight doesn't go to decision at minus 265. So I don't want to spend too much time on this fight because it's pretty much two big guys going in there, throwing big shots at each other. One guy's more than likely going to fall down. I got to give the slight technical advantage from Tai Tuivasa, not to mention the experience advantage from Tai Tuivasa, and also the fact that he actually got in a full training camp here, whereas Harry Hunsucker is like, oh, y'all need a heavyweight? All right, let's go do this. Let me try to knock some fool's head off. What did he do since the Contender Series fight? Went out there and knocked some guy out that didn't even look like he wanted to be in there. I'm not sure if you saw that fight against, I think the kid's name was like Corey Moon or something like that. He knocks him out in like 50 seconds. Just bing, bang, boom, knocks the guy out. So, yeah, this fight's not going to decision. Minus 265 is the line of the year considering the way these guys fight. I don't expect Tai Tuivasa to go out there and lay and prey on this guy. I think if he has the opportunity to take him out, he'll do just that. So minus 265, take all my monies. Take my house. We got minus 265 on the fight doesn't go to decision. How are you liking this one?
Yeah, I'm looking at Tai Tuivasa, obviously. Tai Tuivasa by knockout. Tai Tuivasa probably knockout round 1. And the under 1.5, certainly. Yeah, Harry Hunsucker. I mean, actually, you and I are friends with his manager, Jeremy Wilson, who we've done some business with over the years. And yeah, I mean, Harry Hunsucker is who he is. You know, Kentucky regional scene veteran, big heavyweight. I should say big heavyweight, moderate-sized heavyweight at best. And just goes out there and lets his hands fly. I mean, what's he got to lose? I mean, he's got a brawling type style, and his best path to victory is hopefully catch you on with something. You nailed it, you know? I mean, it's not just his last fight. What has he done since the Contender Series? It's largely his entire career. I mean, he's won a couple titles against on the Kentucky regional scene, but you look at his losses, 0-2 and 0-0. Dante Mayles ended up being something, right? Dante Mays, but who was originally the opponent for Tai Tuivasa in this spot. But it's like his losses, okay, it's to it 0-2 and 0-0. The wins, 1-9, 0-0, 2-5, 1-0, 15-17. That was a big one for him. 9-14. Oh, that was a second real good one for him. And then loses to Jared Vanderaa. But what you do see with the Jared Vanderaa fight is exactly what you're going to see in the Tai Tuivasa fight, is that he realizes he's outgunned. He realizes he's probably going to lose this fight. And he realizes he has nothing to lose. See, he's 32 years old, right? So when he takes this fight in Contender Series, he had no dream that he'd ever be fighting in front of Dana White. Holy shit, man. This is as close to the UFC as you can get without physically fighting in the UFC. You're in the Apex. Dana's sitting cage side, and I could get a contract. Well, I'm just going to let my hands go. So he goes out there, and he lets his hands go. And he actually clips Jared Vanderaa. He landed a couple decent shots. But when Vanderaa just ate them, like the giant ogre that he is, it was like, oh, man, Harry Hunsucker's tired. And then one simple takedown down. Harry Hunsucker's starting to suck wind. He's Hunsucking wind, I guess I should say. And then he's just tired. Like his game falls apart, and he eventually gets TKO'd by Jared Vanderaa, 3.5 minutes into the first round. He came, he gave it the old college effort. It didn't work. Doesn't get the contract, has to go back to real life. Again, you're 32. You just lost in that big spot. Chances are you're never going to get there. And maybe that's a realization you come to. Ring, ring. Jeremy Wilson here. UFC did call. That's a fine management job, by the way. That is an excellent manager. UFC does call. They need somebody to fight Tai Tuivasa on 3 days' notice. Well, most of the other guys don't want to do it. But this is your dream, man. You want to fight in the UFC. And this opportunity probably wasn't supposed to come and may never come again. So what do? You jump and you take it. The same thing as the Vanderaa fight. I didn't expect to be here. My path to victory is getting this thing done early, and I have nothing to lose. So go out there and let your hands go. But unfortunately, Tai Tuivasa has got, one of those classic Samoan chins. He can take one hell of a punch. And again, when you look at him, honestly, the UFC hasn't really done him any favors. I mean, he came to the UFC as kind of a decent prospect, a guy that was really mobile, former rugby, professional rugby player, good athlete for a guy that's 265 pounds, good gimmick with the shoey. They match him up lightly. He gets Rashad Coulter, Cyril Asker. And then now he's 2 fights in his UFC career. Andre Arlovski, okay. They believe in this kid, and he wins. Andre Arlovski, he beats a lot of these prospects that just aren't really all that good. Well, Tai Tuivasa goes and he gets the win. Then now he's headlining a card against Junior Dos Santos. What? And he wins the first round. Second round, he gets caught. Blagoy Ivanov? You mean the world Sambo champion? Guy that beat Fedor in a Sambo match? Guy that got stabbed in the fucking heart in a Bulgarian nightclub? Lived to tell the tale? Is that a good fight to come off a loss? Young in your career? No. And then Spivak, everyone laughed at him. But in hindsight, it's like, Spivak's not bad, man. Guy's huge, 6'7", Ukrainian, grappler, very strong, growing physically. Those are not easy fights. Tai lost those fights. He did very much, but he's still young, man. He's still only 28. He's still a good athlete. He's still getting better. They just got to match him up a lot softer. Giving him Stefan Struve is a guy that has experience and has a name, but Stefan Struve is not the man he used to be. Tai Tuivasa, a very winnable fight. He goes out there, he gets the knockout, as I believe he was supposed to. And Stefan Struve has actually since retired. But they don't go in there and throw him back into the Lions. They didn't give him a young heavyweight like a Tom Aspinall or a Chris Daukaus or like someone that would be a serious problem for him. They went and they booked him against Dante Mays. Well, that's a good little fight for him. And then Mays falls out, and his replacement's Harry Hunsucker. Like, Harry Hunsucker looks like he's on the bill running for state in Georgia. Like, or I guess I should say Kentucky. I mean, I don't know. This is going to be a tough spot for him. So I think Ty takes him out. I would love to say Ty, but I mentioned it earlier, I'm going to take Ty first round. But like, there's a small possibility that Ty has a slow start, takes him out in the second. But I really think Harry Hunsucker is going to force the action. I think he's going to go right at Ty and probably land a couple shots. I think Ty's going to eat a couple shots, and then Ty's going to let his hands go back. And, taking the fight on 3 days' notice, Harry Hunsucker, he's got a full-time job. He's not a full-time fighter. I really think Carter is going to be an issue. He'll let his hands go. Once that doesn't work, he goes out on his shield. So under 1.5, Ty Tuivasa by knockout. And yeah, probably chase that first round. We don't have numbers for the majority of that stuff. Yeah. The fight just got announced yesterday. But come tomorrow, come fight time, we're going to be looking for those unders and the Ty knockout prop.
It kind of reminds me of when Justin Shane stepped in on short notice against Frank Camacho, like knowing that the best way to win this fight is to go out there, rush this guy, and hope for a knockout. I'm expecting the same thing here from Harry Hunsucker. Does he actually succeed in knocking out Tai Tuivasa, who, in my opinion, I think his only loss by finish is to Junior Dos Santos? I don't see it happening, but I do think we see him gas himself out and then eventually get finished. So yeah, fight doesn't go to decision though. Minus 265, line of the year, is it not? Come on, considering that Harry Hunsucker just probably doesn't even have cardio for 3 minutes in this fight, 4 minutes. So you're telling me you're giving me 15 minutes for this fight to finish? Yeah, I'm taking the minus 265. So that's definitely one of my favorite props on this card. And you guys will obviously see that later in our next segment. All right, let's move on to the co-main event here. And again, a big reminder to you guys, 225 of you in the chat. Please do hit that like. We're close to that 100 like mark. Make sure you guys do that for us. And that will show us a great amount of appreciation and support and keep us coming back on a week-to-week basis. All right, let's get to the co-main event fight. And I cannot wait for this one, especially for the return of our guy, Gregor Gillespie, coming into this fight as obviously a big favorite here. Minus 250-ish is what I last saw him at. Minus 265 now, plus 225 on Brad Riddell. I love me some Gregor Gillespie, man. That guy probably, with Khabib outside of the UFC now, probably has the best wrestling in the 155-pound division. Islam Makhachev could probably make a statement for that as well. But Gregor, man, probably one of the best wrestling by far. The guy is not just a one-and-doneer with his wrestling. Goes out there, and if he's not able to get that first takedown, he changes it into a second one, and a third one, and a fourth one. And he doesn't let you go until he gets your ass onto the ground. And he does a very good job of doing that against all of his past opponents, except one, Kevin Lee. Kevin Lee, I feel like he respected him in the grappling realm and saying, okay, I got to, soften this guy up on the feet a little bit before I start getting my wrestling going. And before that happened, and not to mention, he did some really good work with that front jab of his. He was able to really bust up Kevin Lee before Kevin Lee put his lights out. But the best game that Gregor Gillespie shows is when he gets his wrestling game going. Now, with Brad Riddell, on the other hand, there's always that city kickboxing tax on these guys. And that's where I think is kind of keeping him away from being a plus 300, plus 350 underdog in this spot. And not to mention, obviously, the knockout loss that Gregor Gillespie is coming off of. But, man, if you're telling me that guys that have had success in the UFC against Brad Riddell, and that success has come from grappling and wrestling, and now you're giving him the best grappler and wrestler in the UFC, or at least in the 155-pound division, yeah, I don't see Riddell winning this fight. Like, I feel like his knockout powers have almost like diminished since coming to the UFC. He recorded a knockdown against Magomed Mustafayev and obviously against Jamie Mullarkey, but he has yet to capture a knockout victory in his 3 fights in the UFC. But again, Alex De Silva, Jamie Mullarkey, and Magomed Mustafayev all getting him down, all getting good control time. But the difference between those guys and our guy Gregor Gillespie is that Gregor can go 15, 25 minutes if he needs to, whereas Alex and these guys start to slow down after that first round. That's where we see the drop-off of, yeah, they are still able to complete takedowns, but they're not able to hold Brad down. And then once Brad gets this to a distance, he's able to really pick these guys apart and start doing his work. But I don't think he's going to have the benefit of being able to get back to his feet as often as he did in those last fights, nor do I think you have the benefit of having the slightly better cardio than his opponents. So, yeah, I like Gregor in this spot, and I think he's very live for a submission too. The one thing that I like about Gregor's game outside of his wrestling is that he's a really high-level jiu-jitsu player too. That's one thing that a lot of these high-level wrestlers kind of forget about. Yeah, it's great to get the fight to the ground, but what do you do once you get the fight to the ground? You're just going to hold him down? Are you going to try Sarah McMahon it? It's not going to work out. It just doesn't work out for some of these wrestlers. Whereas Gregor Gillespie, he's very active. He's very fluid on top, passes guard very well. more often than not looks for that arm triangle choke, one of his favorite submissions. And then if he's not able to get that, hops on over to full mount, starts raining down big shots, lets you give up your back, either sinks in a choke or starts going ham on your on the back of your head with some ground and pound as well. So I think we see a very emphatic return for Gregor here. There is obviously the possibility of a Brad Riddell KO. We can't just completely completely dismiss the fact that the knockout is live. Plus 550 on Riddell by KO. If you're betting Riddell at all, that's a spot to go. There's no way he wins this fight by decision. There's no way he keeps Gregor off of him for 15 minutes to win a decision. So I think his only shot is winning by KO. I don't think it comes to fruition. I think we see Gregor go out there and get a submission. The spot that I like is Gregor via submission at plus 250. I think that's a very solid spot. I like everything that I've been hearing from him from his media day. He's very accepting and acknowledges the knockout loss to Kevin Lee and gives him all the props and all that stuff. He's not hung up on it or anything like that. He seems game, ready to go, and he seems like a no-nonsense type of guy. Add Keith Trimble into his corner as well, who's just one of those, save Sayu type of coaches. This guy's going to have his head on straight, and he's going to come out and give us a quintessential Gregor Gillespie type performance. And in his UFC career, some people have called him boring, which I find very weird to say, even though he's had only one decision victory in his entire UFC career, which was his first fight against Glyco Franca. But since then, going out there and just dummying these guys on the ground. And I'm expecting the same thing here this weekend against Brad Riddell, who has shown complete incompetencies when he's dealing with guys in the grappling realms. Obviously, he gets back to his feet against these guys because those guys are starting to suck wind. Gregor Gillespie, not going to suck wind. So I like Gregor here. I think he wins inside the distance. I think he wins via submission. That's the spot that I'm going to go plus 250. How are you seeing this one?
Yeah, listen, I got Gregor. I think a lot of people like Gregor. We've always talked about he's the number 2 wrestler to Khabib. Maybe he could give Khabib a go. But honestly, this is the one concern for me. I'm going to pick him. I'm going to take him by decision of all things. But yeah, what concerns me is that maybe he's a great athlete, he's a great wrestler, maybe a good grappler. But I don't know how committed he is to actually fighting. So he spent the majority of his adult life wrestling, never quite made to the highest level because Jordan Burroughs wrestled the same fucking weight class. Yeah. Not his fault, but he never quite got there. But this is intriguing. So he makes his MMA debut. He's on short notice. He goes to Brazil, enemy territory, taking on the Ultimate Fighter champion Glyco Franca, and he was a plus 120 underdog actually in his debut. But then after that, it's that should have been sky's the limit for this guy. Let's move him forward. But then he takes on Andrew Holbrook. He's a 3-1 favorite. Jason Gonzalez, he's a 5-1 favorite. Jordan Rinaldi, he's a 6-1 favorite. Vince Pichel, he's a 4-1 favorite. Yancy Medeiros, he's a 5-1 favorite. And then against Kevin Lee, he was a minus 165, and he got knocked the absolute fuck out in the first round. So
I broke his jaw.
Yeah. So then he takes off a year and a half, right? Since the Kevin Lee fight, he broke his jaw. He got knocked out. It was a really bad spot for him. He's 34 years old. So people keep talking about him he's a prospect. He's 6-1 on the UFC and he's getting better. It's he's 34, man. And by his own account, I'd rather be fishing. He likes to fish. He likes being an outdoorsman. He's a great athlete. He's a great competitor. He knows what he's got to do in order to get the victory. But once the going gets tough, I don't know. I don't know that you could put faith that that's the difference between him and Khabib. Khabib wouldn't rather be fishing. He'd rather be smashing somebody in the octagon. His entire demeanor, his entire life, his entire personality is get to this set goal. Whereas I feel Gregor Gillespie has all types of other goals and accomplishments that he wants to set out and do in his life. But is he a great fighter? Yeah, I think he's a great fighter. But I don't know that that's going to – should I say he's a great athlete? He's a great athlete. He's a great fighter. I think the book's still out on that. He's beaten 5 guys that were subpar, and his loss to Kevin Lee is the one time he stepped up. I completely agree. He's got all of the advantages in the world here against Brad Riddell, and that is the reason why I'm going to pick him. He completes takedowns on all of his fights. And mind you, it is lower-level guys, but he goes out there and he just rinse and repeat with the takedown. His wrestling is second to none. You see him go out there, the Yancy Medeiros fight 6 takedowns. Vince Pichel, who's so strong, 7 takedowns. Jordan Rinaldi only needed 1. Jason Gonzalez, 4 takedowns. The Glyco Franca fight, his debut, 5 takedowns. He can just default setting, go to takedowns, and take you down. Brad Riddell, he's doing an excellent job of getting up after he gets taken down. Alex Silva, 3 takedowns. Okay, but not the end of the world, right? Magomed Mustafa have 8 takedowns. Strange, but he got back up really quick after all of them, and it's Magomed Mustafa. Jamie Malarkey, 3 takedowns. It's okay, so everybody that wants to get him down is able to get him down. What I will give him is that he keeps working his way back up. When he does work his way back up, 3 decision wins in the UFC, so maybe power's not there, but you look at his regional scene career and he's dicing guys. I'm pretty sure he diced up Song Kenan too. he has good power. He has a lot of these first round knockouts. It just hasn't materialized in the UFC. What he does go is he throws caution in the wind. So I guess my only real question here is that Gregor Gillespie against Kevin Lee looked tentative to wrestle. Looked like he wanted to use his hands a lot more. Now coming off a year-long absence, coming off a knockout, surely he doesn't want to test his hands out. He wants to wrestle. But is there not a world that exists that Gregor Gillespie goes out there, gets the takedown, and, Brad Riddell works his way back up, as he often does. And when he works his way back up, he starts landing these shots, and Gregor doesn't react well. Again, 34 years old, coming off his first career knockout loss, coming over his first career loss in general. Like, there's a lot of things that could go south for him, but I think he's the superior wrestler. Wrestling wins fights. I am going to back him in the spot. The minus 235 line, I think it's starting to get a tad bit out of hand, but I'm going to take Gregor Gillespie by decision. You made a similar point to Paul Shaughnessy made, which is like the submission is live here. Like, Gregor's got an ironclad grip. He's got a good rear naked choke. If he's going to be routinely getting takedowns, and to get up, Brad Riddell's going to have to risk putting himself in bad situations to scramble. Then, like, why can't Gregor just grab a hold of him and submit him? But I'm going back to the same thing with like a Bontarin versus Kaikar Frost. These guys out of City Kickboxing, they know they're going to be getting out grappled. They know that they're going to be getting taken down a lot. So they spend a lot of time working on that submission defense. And I feel like that should be enough for him to just stave off some of those submission attempts by Gillespie, survive some rounds, but the takedowns do become the difference maker. Gregor wins a decision, plus 120. But yeah, Gregor's got to show a little bit something here, right? This guy, he could still be a great contender, but at 34, he needs to win this one and then jump into a top 10 matchup. And the last time he tried jumping into a top 5, top 10 matchup, just wasn't ready for it, right? Did he make a ton of improvements in his time off? Like, I don't know. Broken jaw? Like, does that not change your psyche a bit? We'll have to wait and see, but I'm going to chase that decision, Gregor Gillespie, plus 120.
Yeah, I think everybody's very much excited for this fight just to see how Gregor truly comes out, especially after such a devastating knockout. I wish I was able to collect some sort of historical data regarding guys that got knocked out very brutally for the first time ever and how they've competed after. The only one that really comes to mind in terms of somebody that got knocked out pretty bad was Frankie Edgar getting knocked out by Brian Ortega and then coming back like a month and a half later and beating Cub Swanson over 5 rounds, right? So that's the only one that truly comes to mind. But Frank Edgar was much more experienced by that point of his career compared to Gregor Gillespie, who was only at 12 or 13 fights at that point in time. But yeah, glad to hear that we're both on Gregor here. I got him via sub, you got him via decision. We'll see how it pans out this weekend. All right, let's get to the main event now. And just a reminder before we do, please smash that like button. That definitely helps you guys out. We're at 107 right now, and we got over 230 guys in the chat. Do your part. Stay live in the chat. That's cool and all, but just hit that like. That's the extra you guys can do for us. All right, let's move on to the next fight here. Again, main event. We got Derek Brunson taking up another up-and-comer in Kevin Holland. We got Kevin Holland coming in as the favorite at minus 175, plus 155 on Derek Brown. Derek Brunson, goddamn, get your head in the game. We're almost done the stream. Derek Brunson obviously turns away Edmund Shabazian in his last fight as a huge underdog, close to a 3-1 underdog in that fight, is able to kind of withstand the power of Edmund and then really start to wear on him in rounds 2 and 3, and ultimately finishing him in that third round. I think he's going to need a similar approach here. I think he's going to have to deal with Holland a little bit in that first round, but I don't know if Holland truly has that crazy knockout power that I think is going to be very over-exaggerated, especially after his knockout finish over Jacare Souza last time around. Yeah, it looked brutal. Yeah, it looked very, very bad for Jacare Souza, but I think that was just one of those freak KOs, kind of similar to the Nico Price and Randy Brown kind of knockout that we don't see that often. I think Derek Brunson will obviously have the grappling advantage here, at least from the wrestling aspect. Kevin Holland, black belt under Travis Lutter, but when you see him in those situations, it doesn't really look like he's a black belt, especially when he's spending the majority of round 3 under Darren Stewart, who's primarily a striker. So that was a huge red flag for me when I'm trying to break down this fight. I think Holland will have the striking advantage in terms of being the longer, rangier guy, obviously very unorthodox in his approach with a lot of spinning stuff and flying shit that he likes to throw. And his hands are pretty nice too, I'll give him that. But Derek Brunson, since moving down to Sanford MMA before his fight against Elias Theodorou, has just absolutely turned the corner. And you definitely see him give the props to Sanford MMA, especially after he finishes Edmund Shabazian. First thing he says when he gets up, 3-0, Sanford MMA. That just lets you know that he believes that camp is having a direct impact on how he's competing at this point in time. He's 37 years old. If he wants to get it going, it's got to be now. And now we're seeing a very disciplined approach from him. And I really like what we see out of him. He uses his striking well in the Ian Heinisch fight, uses his wrestling well in that fight as well. And then obviously the Edmund Shabazian does the same thing. Strikes well, grapples well, and then eventually ground and pound finishes Edmund Shabazian, who was already compromised going into that third round. But I think Brunson has all the skills in the world. I think that he'll have the better cardio here too. We've seen Derek Brunson drop a couple round threes in his past, not to mention, again, most recently that Darren Stewart fight where he just could not get off of his back. That was very, very concerning, especially if you're a Kevin Holland backer in that fight. But Derek Brunson is going to be the better wrestler. I think you'll have the better cardio as well. In all of his fights, like his last 3 fights alone, it looked like he could go another 2 rounds if need be. The guy's cardio looks great. So if his chin holds up, which is a narrative I think is being overblown because of his fighting style from the past, which is just very reckless, crash forward, big winging hooks, leave your chin up in the air. That really cost him in the past. And now he's fighting a lot smarter. He's fighting a lot more discipline. And I think the knockout or his chin durability is going to be significantly lower now, or at least the chances of him knocked out are going to be significantly lower. And I don't think that Kevin Holland is this crazy knockout artist either. So I lean Brunson. I just don't know if he gets this fight finished late, around 4 or 5, or by decision. But I think the safest spot I'll go with is giving Kevin Holland the benefit of the doubt, and I'll take Brunson to win by decision at plus 365. And I think it's going to come from a grapple heavy and wrestling heavy approach. And I think that we've seen other guys very successful against Kevin Holland in that aspect. And this is by far, in my opinion, you can let me know if I'm wrong, but I think this is the best wrestler that Kevin Holland has to go up against, at least in the UFC. So how do you see this one?
Yeah, okay, so when we talk about the last fight, Gregor Gillespie versus Brad Riddell, it's, you're looking at the numbers, and one guy's getting takedowns every time, and one guy's getting taken down. If you want to look at this in the same light, it's the same thing. And Kevin Holland gave up, he went 2 for 2 takedowns against Jacare. Jacare shot 2 takedowns, got him down both times. Relatively easy, right? Darren Stewart took him down 3 times. Brendan Allen took him down twice. Alicia DiTrigo took him down twice. Joe Mearshart took him down 6 times. His takedown defense is just, it is lackluster. With Derek Brunson, I mean, listen, he's pretty one-dimensional with his wrestling, but he goes out there and he scores takedowns. Took down Edmund down 4 times. Took down Ian Heinisch twice. Took down Elias 4 times. He goes out there and he's scoring takedowns. So how do we think this fight's going to play out? Well, Kevin Holland's dangerous standing because he's long and he's unorthodox, man. The guy will throw a flying karate chop at you. Guy will throw a revert back elbow. Like, he'll throw sneaky techniques. He'll throw some spinning shit. For Derek Brunson, a guy that largely always has his chin clean up in the air, waiting to get countered, he probably is not going to want to stand with Kevin Holland for a prolonged period of time. What he's going to want to do is shoot these takedowns and get this fight to the ground. Once he does get the fight to the ground, we know that Kevin Holland was just awarded his BJJ black belt, but Derek Brunson's never been submitted. Derek Brunson's been in there with a lot of good guys, right? So I feel like if Brunson's on top, just holding him down, smothering him, raining down some light ground and pound, and Kevin Holland isn't able to scramble back up to his feet, it's going to be a problem. If this was a 3-round fight, I would think Derek Brunson has got a very good chance. But as far as a 5-round goes, like, to me, I just keep getting the idea that at some point Kevin Holland is going to clip him. Now, with Derek Brunson, you made a great point. You're like, maybe the fact that he's got a suspect chin is overblown. A lot of people will say, dude's been knocked out 5 times. Like, no, he does have a chin issue. But I actually tend to agree with you. Israel Adesanya knocked him out. Okay, no big deal. Jacare. Anderson Silva was a decision loss. Robert Whittaker. Yoel Romero. Jacare the first time, and then he got flat robbed by that Kendall Grove fight. That's his first pro loss. I didn't even count it. So let's just go over that again. Jacare was the top guy in Strikeforce. Yoel Romero was the Olympian. He actually took down Yoel Romero multiple times in that fight. Really looked good until he got knocked out. Robert Whittaker, former champion. Anderson Silva was a GOAT. Again, that one, he got robbed again. Jacare Souza in the rematch, and Israel Adesanya, the current middleweight GOAT. He's not losing to guys that are outside of the top 3, at top 5 at the very least. He fights the best guys. He gets knocked out by the best guys. Is Kevin Holland the best guy? Like, he had a great 2020, went 5-0. He knocked out a 41-year-old Jacare Souza. That was pretty tough. Coming from the back with the hammer fist, like, that was dope. Who the hell does that, especially to Jacare? But, like, fighting Charlie Ontiveros is like that's big. Split decision win over Darren Stewart. You lost the 3rd round to him. You look completely exhausted. The win over Alexander Fluffy Hernandez looks a lot better in hindsight that he beat Rodolfo Vieira. But again, like, are those quick wins over like top 30, top 35 guys? Like, does that make him a top 5 guy? Is he in the top 10 currently? I like that he's young. He's only 28. As we mentioned, just got awarded his BJJ black belt. In the Jacare fight, when he got taken down the first time, he looked super comfortable. Second time around, Jacare was already hurt and a little bit tired by then. And he puts it on, whatever. He lands some dirty shots off his back, whatever. It's a cool knockout. But like, does that happen again to Brunson? Is he going to knock out Brunson off his back? No, he's got to get this fight standing. But that therein lies where 5 rounds should help Kevin Holland. The last thing goes back to your argument with Brunson. Is like Kevin Holland's finishing these guys in the first round. The one time you've seen him get extended, which was the Darren Stewart fight, he flat gassed after 3. Derek Brunson just made a whole lot of money exposing Edmund Shabazian's lackluster ground game and takedown defense and gas tank. Could he not just go do the same thing to Kevin Holland? So anyways, what it really comes down to is if his hair is platinum blonde, because there's this thing right now where like these guys come in with platinum blonde, slim, shady hair, and then they just have like world beater performances.
Trevin Jones, I think, was the last one.
Oh my God, that guy kills me, man. Brunson looked really good his last time out rocking the platinum blonde hair. Charles Oliveira rocking the platinum blonde hair. He's reinvigorated. If Brunson goes out there and scores these takedowns and Kevin Holland starts to get tired, this is his fight to win. If Kevin Holland is that real deal prospect that people are making him out to be, and he goes and he lands the KO, certainly possible. This is a card that I think dogs have a chance, but I am siding with a lot of the favorites. I think Brunson's very much a live dog, but this is the prop show. I don't have to actually make a direct pick until tomorrow night. So what I do here is I give him my best prop. And man, I like the over 1.5, minus 185. I also got fight starts round 3, minus 125. So again, does Kevin Holland knock him out in the first round? Like, I don't know. I'm kind of banking on this 5 rounds, tire him out, get the fight, get back up, make him work, land something. And if Brunson has his way, he is the live underdog. You are right. He does win this fight. Yeah, he's banking 3 or 4 rounds before he takes out Holland. If he takes him out at all, he might just win a decision and just keep grounding him and beating him up, or like Shabazian, he crumples. But the difference there is Shabazian is 21, had no experience in the UFC, was really outgunned. Kevin Holland fought 5 times last year, like he is coming off a win over Jacare Souza, a guy that has been ranked in the top 5 for a decade. It's like he does have some good spots, he does have some good fights, he is way more experienced, and he's finally just starting to find his rhythm. And the shit talk is just legendary, right? So if you're in the apex, it's a small cage that favors the wrestler, does favor Brunson, but you can also listen to the shit talk. Maybe that swayed you, maybe damage off your back, like Yana Kunitskaya versus Ketlin Vieira from a few weeks back, right? You're on your back, but you're working. That was in the apex as well, wasn't it? You're on your back, you're getting taken down, and you're working. Brunson's not huge with the ground and pound. He just does little more, just so that he don't get stood up. Keeps it going. Don't get stood up. But if Holland's out there throwing elbows, he likes to do the open hand slap a lot, especially when he's clinched up. He likes to palm slap. It's all just working, My worry is the harder he works, the more prone he is to getting gassed out. But again, I'm looking for that over 1.5, and I don't care if he gets gassed out after that.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing if Brunson can continue this kind of gatekeeper status that he's at and just keep turning away these up-and-comers. And again, I'd like to see, his chin get tested again. I truly want to see if Kevin Holland has this crazy knockout power that everybody continues to think that he has. But yeah, we're on the same side here, right? You're taking Brunson? You got Brunson here?
Honestly, officially, I did go with Kevin Holland. And,
okay.
Same thing on the show last night, Kevin Holland. I said I'd take Brunson in a 3-rounder. I got a gut feeling that in a 5-rounder, Kevin Holland's live at some point. But I think that if you like making money, I think that the play here would be the over 1.5, and hope that Brunson doesn't just get toppled over.
Even over 2.5 is not too bad around that minus 120 mark. I like that spot as well too.
And that's why I took fight starts round 3, because I figured that it would at least get the first 2 rounds in the bank. The over 2.5, it's like, okay, an early 3rd round finish screws me. And the fight to start round 3, if your book offers it, it was minus 125, right? So it's not really even that much different than the over 2.5. You're just saving yourself 2.5 minutes, right?
For sure. All right, let's move on to our best bets so we can wrap this thing up. Let me get our sexy little graphic up here. And I'll kick things off as I usually do. So the first one that I got is Gillespie via sub plus 250. That's a spot that I really like. I think his jiu-jitsu is going to be a little bit too much for Riddell here once he gets this fight to the ground. And, is just going to continue passing. As a specific sub, I think the one that's most likely is going to be his arm triangle choke. That's something that he likes to seek more often than not. And as he, likes to work from his side control position, which is probably his favorite position to hold his opponents down, he's always seeking to clear that arm and then get his arm triangle game going. So I think that's what we'll see him win here. So I'll go Gillespie via sub as one of my first 3 best bets. Next up, I got Marion Reneau, round 3. You know, I got to give that one plus 1,700. I think Chiasson goes out there and kind of just gasses herself out. More than likely wins the first 2 rounds. Don't get me wrong. I'm expecting Reneau to be down going into the 3rd round here. And Reneau never been finishing her career. Durability is top notch. And she has won 4 out of her 9 fights in rounds 2 and round 3. So I'm expecting her to, withstand whatever Chiasson throws at her in the first 10 minutes and go out there and get that 3rd round sub specifically. So yeah, I like me some Reneau in round 3. And then lastly, this is the chalkiest prop I'll ever give you guys, but I love it so much.
That's not
I
your
love
style.
it so much.
You have a plus 1,700 here too, so it's okay.
Tuivasa, Hunsucker, fight does not go to decision, minus 265. If this fight even starts around 3, I wish we had that prop available to us, but we don't since the late notice of this fight. But minus 265, I think is still absolutely crazy. I was honestly expecting it to be around what the opening line was, which was minus 420, and it's completely gone the other way. I'm not sure exactly why. Maybe in the Dontel Mays fight, I understand that aspect, but when you have Harry Hunsucker in here, who in 10 professional MMA fights has never been past 4 rounds, and even if a fight goes past 3 rounds, the guy looks like he's already sucking wind and ready to roll over and die. I think Tai Tuivasa is going to go out there and knock this guy out, but fight doesn't go to decision, gives us a full 15 minutes to work with, and minus 265 is not a bad spot at all, considering all the historical data that we have here for both guys. All right, Cody, I've already spoiled your first one. Let them know what your 3 best bets are.
Yeah, so I'm going with JP buys versus Bruno Silva to go the distance. As I mentioned, I think that this is the kind of fight that Bruno likes to just grind everything down to a slog, right? He's got good defensive wrestling, but when he does get taken down, he survives. He's got good grappling defense. He's got a good chin. He's got all these variables that just allow the fight to go the distance. If he loses, JP buys is going to wrestle, and this thing's going the distance. If he wins, he's going to grind JP buys down, land some slightly better strike standing, and maybe even complete a few takedowns of his own. Regardless, this thing goes to the decision. If you got bigger cojones than I do, you do want to take that Bruno Silva dog shot. You want to take Bruno by decision. It's like plus 305. I'm going to play this one safe, take the minus 140, that the fight just goes to decision. Moving on to that, we got to take it to a little more risk, right? We're going to go Grant Dawson via decision plus 1,200. Now, as I mentioned, if I had the cojones, I'd be right there with my boy Manfred in a 3rd round finish for Grant Dawson, which is plus 1,475. But again, decide to play it safe, try to build up that bankroll, try to keep the good times going. So we're going to Grant Dawson by decision plus 120. Leo Santos is obviously really dangerous. He's got power standing. He's got a good submission game. He hasn't really submitted a guy in a long time, but all the same, we know that where his jiu-jitsu's at and what he's capable of doing. But Grant Dawson, he's the young, athletic, wily, moving up to 55, bigger, stronger guy. I think he's just going to grind him. He's going to tire him out. Cardio is going to be the key here. Grant Dawson should be able to do a lot of damage from top control, but not quite get that finish. So give me Grant Dawson by decision plus 120. And then, there's my cojones. I can feel them popping down. We're going to go Gregor Gillespie plus 230. Now, you and I tend to do this a little bit. You know, you got the Gregor Gillespie sub. I got the Gregor Gillespie decision. I think in prior weeks we had Laura Procopio. I had the decision. You had the sub. Last week we had to go opposite sides. You had Misha Cherkinov sub. I had the Ryan Spann KO. Regardless, sometimes
you're up on me. You're up on me so far.
No. We it's a balance, you know. Sometimes I need you to have my back. Sometimes you might need me to have your back. That's why we're propping each other up.
Hey.
So in this spot, you know, what we need is Gregor Gillespie to win, and we need him to win by a method that's not TKO, right? And then if that happens, we're looking good here. You got a plus 250. I got a plus 230. Honestly, you're not wrong in that the submission's there. It's live. He can get the arm triangle choke. He can really bust down Brad Riddell. But I'm a Brad Riddell fan. I think this guy brings a lot to the table. Unfortunately, they've done absolutely no favors for him in giving him a wrestler of this magnitude. But all the same, I think he's tough enough, and I think he's durable enough to give up those takedowns, work his way back up, land a few strikes, get taken down again, survive. If he gets in bad spot like Kai Car-France, teammate did a few weeks back against Alexei Barnes, it's like peel the hands, stay composed, work your way out. Unfortunately, Kai Car-France ended up knocking Montserrat out, so hopefully we don't have some crazy reverse of fortunes here. But yeah, we're both on Gillespie. I just think that it's going to take 15 to get the hand raise. And so for that reason, I'm going to take Gregor Gillespie by decision plus 230.
All right. I think we got some solid props here. I think Cody went 1-3 on his props last week. I went 1-3 on my props.
I got
sorry, 1-1. I'll give you 1-1. I went 1-2 on my props. Hopefully we can come out at least 3 props out of these 6 that we can cash for you guys, because they also have some serious value on them outside of maybe that minus 265 on Hunsucker Tuivasa. I think that there's value on it, considering that it should be minus 500 regardless. So yeah, I'm right there with you. I think I just do not see how that fight ends up going to the judges' scorecards. I'd probably have to off myself if that's what happens. But it is what it is. Happy to do this stream with you as always, Cody. I'll leave the platform to you right now if there's anything you want to say on the way out, and then I'll wrap this thing up.
No, I really appreciate everyone coming by, as I always say. I mean, you guys are just an awesome, group of guys. We kind of have like something building here, a nice little community. And I know week in and week out, good cards, bad cards, you guys keep coming and supporting. And I know that when Locke always says, hit the like, you guys do. We always get these 100 likes, and I know there's a lot of reoccurring faces. And even if you don't leave a comment, but you just tune in to watch the show, we honestly really do appreciate the support. So back at it tomorrow night, odds.com. And we'll be able to at least see the weigh-ins, get a little bit more information, make these final picks. But we'll also be joined by Guru and Bleed. So maybe we can, see what their opinions are and, really, really just set our last bit of bets in stone. And I think it's been fun. This has been a fun card, 13 fights. Another good offering from the UFC, but we want to chase these specific spots. Don't going to bet everything, but get the ones that we like. So thanks to everyone as always. If you got any questions, on Twitter at CJ Saptic. If not, I'll catch you guys tomorrow night.
For sure. As always, you guys can catch us every Thursday night at 8 p.m. Eastern. Me and Cody always propping you up for the upcoming cards. Next weekend is our last consecutive weekend of fights, and then we got 1 weekend off. But next weekend is a big one. We got UFC 260, 2 title fights on the line, so I can't wait to break that down with Cody from a propping perspective. But in terms of a final weigh-in perspective, you guys can always find me, Cody, Bleed, and a prediction guru 9 p.m. Eastern on Fridays. We'll go over last minute thoughts, see how the guys looked on the scale and all that, and give you guys our final predictions for the fights that happen this weekend. So thanks to everybody that joined us. Make sure you guys hit the like if you haven't already. It's the best way to show support for the show and for the channel. And I love chopping it up every Thursday with Cody and talking to the chat as well too. Thank you guys for joining us as always. And we'll see you guys tomorrow night for the final weigh-in at 9 p.m. Eastern right here on odds.com.